who is our president, is on the road tonight, which is exciting. Maybe it means things are getting back. Welcome to our meeting. For some of you who come often, our meeting format may look a little bit different this evening. We have been having some issues with Zoom bombing. So we have had, unfortunately, to disable our video monitors for the public, unfortunately. Hopefully things will die down and we will be able to not have that for every meeting. But for right now, you are not able to turn on your video or unmute yourself by yourself. So we apologize for that, but hopefully that will correct some of the inappropriate things that have been happening during our meetings. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to introduce a new member to the CEC for District 2, our student member, Katerina Kaur, and I'm going to ask her to say a little bit about herself. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Katerina. I'm currently a senior at Stuyvesant High School, which is in Tribeca. I currently live in District 2, and I attended Eastside Middle School and PS 290 before then. I became interested in government through a program that you might be familiar with called the Manhattan Student Leadership Council. I served as the Eastside Middle School representative when we were working on the Gender Sexuality Alliance legislation. And so I became really inspired by that experience to become more involved in public service and government. And I've had a lot of experience during high school trying out different things, from disaster preparedness with FEMA to international humanitarian law with the Red Cross. But I'm very interested in public policy. And so that's why I decided to apply for the student representative position on the CEC. And I'm very excited to be here and representing us students from District 2.
We are so excited to have you. So thank you so much and welcome. Great. But in order to start our meeting, I would love for Vincent to please take the roll call.
Sure, I will do that, Emily. Robin Broshi, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, Eric Goldberg.
Yes, here.
Okay, Emily Hallstrom is here. Vincent Hom, I'm here. Edward Irizarry, you mentioned he's not present today. So we'll make a note of that. Maud Marin.
Here.
Okay, Benjamin Morden.
Here.
Okay, Ushma Neal.
Here.
Leonard Silverman.
Here.
Shino Tanakawa.
Here.
Tom Rockledge.
Here.
And I will note that our student member is here. So we have 10 members plus our student member present today. Emily?
Thanks, Vincent. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the presentation of a sibling priority letter. Shino, did you want to just say a few words on this, and then we can have a more robust discussion later on our agenda?
Sure, sorry, I'm finding that letter. This is sign-on letter that I received from, I think it was some kind of an email chain, to be honest, but it's addressed to the chancellor, and it is written and signed by school leaders, as well as advocates and parents, asking for sibling preference in admissions across all grade levels citywide. That's essentially the ask. So for those of you who don't know, for middle school and high school, there is no sibling preference. But this is a letter that's asking for expansion of the sibling priority or preference that exists at the elementary school level to middle school and high schools.
Great. And then Robin, I believe you are the author of the resolution in support of the simplified process for families to opt out of standardized tests. I don't know if in the presentation of resolutions, if you wanted to just say anything a little bit more, or we can have a further discussion about it later on.
I'll take 10 seconds to say it's simply for asking the DOE for this year to cut out all the complicated red tape and make it easy for parents to opt out of the standardized tests that the state and the city doesn't want to administer, but the federal government seems to be mandating.
Great. Thanks so much. So next, we are going to have a presentation this evening on the DOE budget and fair student funding given to us by Devinder Kalra. Robin, I don't know if Devinder is able to unmute herself and put her camera on yet.
I made her a co-host.
Great. Devinder, can you hear me and unmute yourself? Devinder, we can't hear you if you are trying to speak. I'm just going to ask once more time. Oh, maybe we do hear you. We heard a good sigh, something that sounded like a sigh.
She's unmuted.
Okay. So Devinder, maybe you could log out and then maybe try logging back in again so that we can hear you. Okay. We have 4 speakers. I'm a little loath to go on to our speaking session, which is what's next in our agenda. But since we only have 4 right now, why don't I just explain that the public session will be coming up next. And why don't I give Shino a chance to sort of explain that if people want to speak, how they might be able to do that.
Okay, so we do maintain a speaker sign up Google form online, and you can reach that form from the CECD2.net main page. I have to actually get to the website to explain how this works. Hold on a sec. So if you go to CECD2.net, on our homepage, there should be, I guess you go through the agenda. I'm so sorry. I don't have this quite together. You click here on the, click here to view the agenda. If you click on the agenda, there will be a public sign up in the middle of the agenda that says to sign up for public speaking, click here. So go to the CCD2.net, click on the view agenda, and then to sign up for public speaking, that'll take you to the Google form.
And then Shino will post your name. If any of you are having trouble seeing, there's a list that she's already put together of 4 people who have already signed up for a public session. Feel free to please add your name if you would like to. And just one note before Devinder begins, there was some confusion on public session in prior meetings. Our speaking time will be 2 minutes for anyone who would like to speak. We do reserve the right, if hundreds of people sign up to speak, to limit that and take that down to a minute. But for this evening, it will be 2 minutes if you would like to speak, and it's really on anything that you have to say. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Devinder and have her speak about the school budgets. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I'm actually having a little trouble with my camera, so I apologize for that.
No worries.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us here this evening for DOE preliminary budget presentation. My name is Devinder Kalra, and I support elementary and middle schools in District 2. I will give you a quick overview of the school budgets and FSF proposal, and then I'll take you through the budget rollout presentation with citywide data for FY22 proposed budget and FSF allocation formula. DOE receives funds allocated in different funding streams, including city, state, and federal funds. State or federal funds, also known as reimbursable funds, come with restrictions on spending. These reimbursable funds, such as Title I, Title II, C4E, 4K, and 3K, can be used for certain programs or to serve targeted student population in a very specific ways. City funds, also known as tax levy funds, such as fair student funding, are fully flexible. After meeting mandated obligations, principals decide how to spend their fair student funding dollars to meet the goals of their instructional programs. Fair student funding is the main source of funding for school, as more than half of the school budget comes from fair student funding. Fair student funding formula was established in year 2008 as a means to increase school level equity in budget allocations by providing all schools with the same amount of money per student based on the grade weight and needs weight. The basic grade weight funding is allocated to schools for all of its students based on the October 31st audited register, whereas needs weight funding for English language learners and special ed students is allocated based on December 31st register. All these weights will be explained in a slide later on in slide 7. Now I'll take you to slide 2, where you will see the budget rollout. I'll take you to slide 2, where you will see the adopted budget for FY22 as of January 2021. So as of fiscal year 2021, the DOE's total adopted budget is $34.3 billion. In the current school year, the DOE received $19.6 billion from city, $12.3 billion from the state, and $2.1 billion from the federal government. So as you could see, New York City provides most of our funding, which is 57% of the total adopted budget of $34.3 billion. City gets its funding from city tax levy dollars, which come from local taxes, including property taxes, personal income taxes, and sales taxes. Every year, the city budget is proposed by the mayor and then negotiated with city council for adoption. New York State is our second largest source of funding, $12.3 billion, which is 36% of the total budget. It has been contributed by the state. State gets its funding mainly from income and sales taxes. Similar to the city, there is a process through which the governor proposes the budget and then negotiated with legislative branch for adoption. Federal government, that is our third largest source of funding. $2.1 billion is supported by federal dollars and is allocated mostly through grants. The federal government gets its funding mainly from income taxes. Every year, the Congress proposes the amount of federal funding we receive, and the president must sign that budget into law. So here in this slide, what you are seeing is the $34.3 billion budget that we receive. How is it distributed to how is it distributed to school for expenditure purposes? So of $34.3 billion, $18 billion, which is the largest share of the total budget, it is allocated directly to 1,800 elementary, middle, and high schools in total of 32 school districts, in addition to District 75, 79, and District 88. $18 billion budget, and in school budget, it includes salaries for classroom teachers, classroom paraprofessionals, principals, assistant principals, deans, and school-based staff. It also includes the cost of fringe benefits associated with staff salaries. For example, if a principal hires a teacher of $90,000, the DOE is paying for extra money for health benefits. So all that money is included in this $18 billion budget for school districts. This also covers funding for after-school programs, textbooks, computers, materials, and supplies, etc. So as you could see, $8 billion, it pays for non-instructional services that students receive, and it does not come out of school budget. These are centrally funded services on behalf of schools and students. 15% of our total budget is allocated for items such as school food, which includes breakfast and lunch available to all students. It also includes transportation costs in addition to building payments, which are loan payments on buildings that we purchase with the capital money. So it's similar to the mortgage payments. About 5 billion, which is 16% of the total budget, is allocated to non-DOE schools such as charter schools, non-public schools, and state-approved specialized contract schools. We are obligated by state for a specific amount for pre-K and school-age students with disabilities attending these non-DOE schools. So these are the schools and programs that educate New York City students, but are not directly run by the New York City Department of Education. Lastly, we have support costs in total of 6 billion that is outside of the school budget and is managed by Central. This pays for custodial costs and facility needs to keep school spaces clean and maintained. It also pays for school safety agents in each school building. It also pays for central academic support costs, including central offices, superintendent offices, borough citywide offices, family welcome centers, committee on special education, and committee on preschool education, which work with schools to provide support and help improve student achievement. So the majority of the DOE budget is allocated directly to schools to support day-to-day operations and cover instructional services for students, mandates, and needs. Of the $18 billion that is allocated directly to school budget is managed by the principals. Principals decide how to spend these funds to meet basic educational needs. Principals work with the school leadership teams to create the school's comprehensive education plan based on the school's specific instructional needs and priorities. Upon receiving the budgets and with input from the school leadership team, principals create the school budget. After meeting the mandated obligations, principals schedule their funds to pay for instructional programs outlined in the CEP, which is a document that guides the work of each school. Superintendent oversee this process. Once the budgets are created and are in alignment with the school's comprehensive education plan, superintendent certify and approve that process. So here in this slide, what you are going to see is how the funds are distributed to schools in different funding components. Of the $18 billion that is allocated to school, $10 billion is allocated through fair student funding, which we will discuss today in detail. The remaining $8 billion is allocated in federal, state, and local funding, is distributed to schools through school allocation memorandums. So as you could see, fair student funding is the largest and the primary source of funding for schools, as the majority of the school budgets are allocated through fair student funding. It's really the most flexible funding source available to schools to cover instructional services, school operations, mandates, and needs. The concept behind the fair student funding is that dollars follow the students. So all students have FSF designation. School allocations change as student population changes. Under fair student funding, schools are allocated based on the total number of students and individual needs associated with those students. This budgeting method is called a weighted student formula. And the weighted student formula is based on the cost of meeting the educational needs of students, with higher weights for students who need the greatest academic support. Not all the allocations are distributed to school through fair student funding. So the remaining $8 billion that is allocated through non-FSF allocation, with $7 billion distributed in local or intra-city and state funding, and $1 billion is allocated through federal grants such as Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, that are allocated directly to school through school allocation memorandums. So there are approximately 100 separate allocations distributed to school, and each one is accompanied by school allocation memorandum. Each SAM has a specific, each school allocation memorandum has a specific purpose, and it may be very broad or very specified. One SAM can go towards hiring a teacher or a social worker, and another SAM could establish a new summer school program, or it could pay for a computer maintenance. So you can find the full list of school allocation memorandums online on the DOE Info Hub website in the financial data and report section under school allocation memorandum. So fair student funding, it pays for classroom staff, student support at DOA community school districts. So over 90% of the fair student funding, it supports classroom teacher staff, cluster quota teachers, teacher absence covers, pupil supporting, including guidance, social worker, after school programs, tutoring, intervention. It also pays for school leadership and administrative support. It also pays for other than personnel services, such as materials and supplies, while other non-FSF allocations provide for other specific programs, including speech, counseling, 3K, and pre-K. So these are the proposed FSF rates that will be used to calculate the fair student funding for 2021-22 school year. These rates provide the fairest level of funding for students and are based on the cost of meeting the educational needs of students. No changes have been made to the formula since 2016-17. We have only updated the English language learner rates to reflect the new state mandates that created additional requirements for integrated versus standalone and commanding students. So in speaking to fair student funding as to what it is and how it operates, every school, regardless of school size and register, receives a fixed foundation allocation of $225,000 to cover basic schools overhead. That is to pay for the principal, assistant principal, secretary, or other minor administrative costs. The remainder of the fair student funding is allocated to schools based on student needs and their respective rates. So these are the rates that are voted by the panel. The key to the fair student funding is the grade weight for students in K-5 of 1. Everything else is relative to that grade weight. In the current school year, the grade weight of 1 is $4,138. That means every weight thereafter is multiplied by this amount. This per capita is adjusted annually to reflect citywide average teacher salary changes. So fair student funding has the foundation allocation of $225,000. It has rates, and it also has collective bargaining related to salary increases for current staff funded with fair student funding. So these are the additional dollars that are added to each school's budget to fully fund all collective bargaining related increases for personnel at $1,100. So these fair student funding rates break down to 3 basic categories for allocation purposes. 1, the grade rate, which is based on the student grade level. 2, needs rate, which is based on the student needs, that is special ed rates for students with disabilities, academic intervention rate for low academic achievement, English language learner rate for students, English language learner rate, and then there is enhanced rates for students in portfolio high school. So grade rates are further subdivided by the grade level, which is K-5, 6-8, 9-12. Similar to grade rate, needs rate are also further subdivided into 3 categories, that is special ed, academic intervention, and English language learners. So individual students may be funded by multiple rates depending on each student's needs. The basic grade rate funding is allocated to school for all students on their audited October 31st register based on each student's grade level. Funding for academic intervention is determined by student academic performance when they enter the school, with poverty funding schools beginning pre-testing grades. So funding for special ed students is determined by the percentage of time students spend receiving special ed services. So there is one weight for students receiving services for less than 20% of their week, and there is another weight funding students receiving part-time services for up to 59% of their week, and the remaining full-time weights depending on the student's grade level and the primary instructional model of special class or ICT services. Funding for English language learners is allocated based on the student's grade level and mandated instructional services model that is bilingual versus English as a new language only and commanding students. So this slide, you will see an example of two students from elementary school that explains how FSF amount is allocated based on the student need. So fair student funding dollars are based on individual student needs. Individual students may be funded by multiple weights. The weights add up by student as shown in the example here. Most FSF determinations are based on the data in ATS. In this example, we have two students, Sam and Alex. Both students are students from elementary school, and this means that they're both entitled to K to 5 grade weight of 1, which is $4,138, shown in the graph in orange. Both students are English language learners, shown in gray. Sam is an elementary school multilingual learner enrolled in standalone English as a new language program. Therefore, Sam is entitled to K to 5 ENL weight of 0.40. Alex is also an elementary school student enrolled in a multilingual learner program. But Alex is entitled to K to 5 bilingual weight of 0.44. So Alex will receive slightly more funding because he needs greater academic support and school needs additional resources to meet additional requirements of specialized instruction. So both students are students with disabilities, as shown in yellow. Sam's individualized education program requires less than 20% of Sam's instructional program. So therefore, Sam will get 0.56 of SET's funding weight. Alex's IP, 21 to 59% of Alex's instructional program to be spent in an IP setting. Therefore, Alex is entitled to the multi-sets weight of 1.25. Both students are students in poverty, therefore they're entitled to so both students, therefore they will receive the poverty weight of 0.12 shown in blue. So if you add all these pieces together, Sam's FSF needs total of 2.08, which is which will add up to the dollar amount of $8,607, while Alex's need total 2.81, and the total dollar amount this student will receive is $11,627. Because each weight of 1 is equal to $4,138, Sam's weight of 2.8 is equal to nearly $8,607, and Alex's weight of 2.81 is almost $11,627 under the fair student funding allocation formula. New York State has not kept up with its financial responsibility to fully fund New York City public schools under the Campaign for Fiscal Equity ruling. The campaign for fiscal equity ruling determined that New York State was not meeting its financial requirements in funding a sound basic education for all students as defined by state law. Therefore, the court determined that the state must pay additional dollars to New York City public schools. The state agreed to provide additional funding to New York City public schools over the course of 4 years, with the DOE receiving incremental funds each year on top of new funds from the previous year. Because of the economic recession in 2009, the state only funded 2 years. So during the recession, New York State walked away from this obligation, preventing full funding of the formula. So no new funds have been given to DOE since 2009, and state actually reduced the funding to a maintenance of effort level. This year, DOE received $1.9 billion less in state funding than its obligation under CFE. So not only we were short of $1.9 billion, state actually reduced $717 million in aid from our budget when the federal government passed the CARES Stimulus Act last spring. This was basically a swap out. While the federal government did allocate money to localities for increased need due to COVID, New York City did not see any new dollars, and federal stimulus funding was substituted in its place, resulting in no net benefit to New York City Department of Education from federal stimulus funding. So despite the funding shortfall, we have made significant investments, obviously, in order to maintain services for students and to create safe learning environment for students. Over 450,000 DOE funded devices have been purchased and issued to students through the pandemic. Additionally, we have 450 learning bridges programs citywide, which provide free childcare for students from 3K through 8th grade, serving nearly 44,000 students. These numbers continue to increase as we expand seats across all 5 boroughs. Additionally, there have been very significant investments in order to support the additional increase in staffing requirements associated with both blended and remote learning. So $18 million in new funding has gone out to schools in their budgets to fund staffing needs associated with programming, in-person and remote learning needs through School Allocation Memorandum number 56, which is COVID-related funding SAM. In addition to $10 million in COVID planning, the COVID planning grant that went over the summer to help prepare for the new school year. In addition, $50 million have been spent by DOE on behalf of schools for cleaning supplies and PPE, and additional $22 million for ventilation repairs, air purifiers, and partitions to support safety in our school. So despite the many challenges associated with pandemic, we are planning for a standard timeline for the rollout of 2021-2022 school budgets, while acknowledging the many dependencies in the rollout of upcoming school year. So from February through April, based on the initial budget estimates of city and state revenue, the DOE presents the CECs with the proposed fair student funding rates for the coming school year. From April and May, the Panel for Education Policy votes on the proposed fair student funding rates for the coming school year. Late spring, DOE is going to release the budget allocations to school. In June, principal along with the school leadership teams will propose their budgets for the coming school year. In July, superintendents must certify alignment between the school budget and comprehensive education plans for the coming school year. And in September, the new school year begins. So you can find the following information on the DOE Info Hub website under reports, financial data, and reports detailed information about each and every school budget allocation in the form of school allocation memorandum, a pragmatic guide to fair student funding, as well as how each fair student funding allocation is calculated for each school. So detailed information of the school budget based on the different types of funding school receive, and detailed information as to how the principal has budgeted for the current year, including the number of staff position and other planned spending. Everything else is, available, and it's all public information. So here now is the time for questions. And we actually want your feedback, questions, and comments around the rates on fair student funding, which is the primary source of funding for schools. While we don't have any changes to the formula going to the fiscal year 2022, all the feedback we will receive can inform and influence any future decision or future proposal around FSF. Comments and questions may be submitted via email to budgetpubliccomments@schools.nyc.gov, or they can be directed by phone to 212-374-6754 by April 27, 2021. All public comments will be reviewed by Department of Education. Public questions and comments related to the fair student funding formula will be posted on the Department of Education Panels for Educational Policy website. Analysis and response of each relevant question and comment will be available for review on the fair student funding website in advance of the April 28th vote.
Thank you so much, Devinder.
No problem.
Do you mind if I open it? I think I'll open it to the council first to see if there are any questions that individual council members have.
I had one quick question, Emily. Hi, Devinder. Thanks again for the presentation. Just wanted to get back to the idea of a supplemental weight for students experiencing temporary or in temporary housing. For several years, we've given feedback to you at the presentations, passed resolutions, and submitted comments into the DOE, looking to recognize the significant funding and support required for students in temporary housing. And year after year, there's no change in the weight or creation of a category. Do you have any update on conversations taking place within the DOE to provide that kind of supplemental weight for students in temporary housing?
I mean, every year the DOE does allocate the funding to all schools based on the, I guess it's based on the prior year register. So if the schools have the increased number of students in temporary housing, I don't think the schools are getting the additional funding.
Well, right. I guess, again, the question is if there would be a supplemental weight. So when you go back to the formula for, weighting the funding that is associated with every student, there is not a category for students in temporary housing. And I think this council and others have recognized the unique needs and support that students in that situation require. So again, the ask is to bring that back to the DOE. We've passed resolutions, written letters, and perpetually have that feedback without any action.
So the supplemental funding for students in temporary housing is not going to be shown under the fair student funding rates. That is a federal allocation that schools receive. Even though schools are non-Title I, they do get the funding in the non-Title I SDH allocation category. Again, it's based on the number of students from the prior year.
Right, and Devinder, again, our hope is that since such significant proportion of funding comes through the Fair Student Funding formula, that it would be appropriate to include, that as well. So it's not just coming from the Title I funding, but also coming from, within the Fair Student funding. So, hopefully you'll continue to consider that.
So as you could see in this slide too, the federal funding, total of 2.1 billion was allocated to school in federal funding, which is again, Title I, or Title II, Title III, or Title IV. Actually, we don't have the breakdown for students in temporary housing students, but it's all embedded over here in federal funding of 2.1 billion. And that's citywide.
Thank you.
Emily, I just want to weigh in here as well to support what Eric is saying. So when the Fair Student Funding Task Force was set up by the City Council, this is a few years ago, the task force would have recommended creating a fair student funding weight for students in temporary housing. It's just, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the recommendations that we developed were never submitted to the DOE. But that's definitely something that we should advocate for, and we should continue to actually do a resolution on that.
Great, thank you, Shana. This is actually very good, and thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Davinda. We just want to create a new category. That's what this is about.
It would certainly help.
Can I ask a really naive question of how many years New York State has been in default in not paying the city its fair share?
Actually, it's from 2009. During the recession, it actually walked away from its obligation of fully funding the, New York City public schools. And it has been maintaining, it has been distributing the funds to the maintenance of effort level. So I guess, like, as I mentioned in slide, let me see, what slide was that? Yeah, it's in slide 9. That clearly shows that how we were shortchanged by $1.9 billion in state aid. And also this year we received 717 million less.
Now, is this New York City specific, or is New York City bearing the brunt proportionally of the lack in state funding, or is there similar lack of state funding across the state? Are you aware?
This is statewide. It comes in the foundation aid, which is the funding category in the state budget for education. But we make up about half of the student population in the state. So it becomes a huge issue here, but it's a statewide issue.
And do we just accept this? I mean, I suppose there's not really a whole lot that our CEC can do.
That's why we pass resolutions and we go up to Albany and we make noise. And people should be doing that right now because the state legislature is negotiating the budget right now. And this is actually quite important. And this year, it's actually important for us to be going to the congressional delegates to make sure that the federal stimulus package includes language about no supplantation. So one of the reasons why the governor was able to swap out funding between the state and federal funding is because he's allowed to do that. He can put in the stimulus money and take the state contribution out. If we get to the congressional delegates and have them put into the stimulus package language that disallowed states from supplanting federal funding for state funding, then we should be able to have a better chance of getting more money.
Thank you for explaining that again. I remember being similarly agog last year when I heard this and remain just as outraged.
Davinder, I'd like to ask you a question. New York City has lost 43,000 students. District 2 elementary schools have lost 1,500 students to, I guess, charters, privates, and to families who have moved outside of New York. How has that impacted the school budget?
Actually, the schools that lost the student population this year due to the pandemic, DOE issued a credit at the rate of 25%. So if the school lost $100,000 for register loss, they got the funding, they got the credit from DOE as $25,000. So instead of paying $100,000 back, they will pay back $75,000.
Okay, and do you have projections for next year already in terms of what the loss might be, or?
Well, actually, DOE is not taking into consideration the loss for this year. They're actually looking at the 5-year historical data for register projections. So for next year, some schools projections will be reduced if they have been if their enrollment has been decreasing from 1 year to another. So they will see an enrollment decline, but not to the huge amount.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else have any further questions for Devinder? Okay, and normally at this time we do take questions from the floor. Robin, do you think that that's going to be possible tonight?
Yeah, I think people should be able to use the reactions button at the bottom of their screen and raise their hand. And then we could ask them to unmute. These would be questions about the presentation.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was just going to say. So if anybody has a question specifically for Devinder about this presentation and you would like to ask it, you can please raise your hand and we will unmute you.
Emily, I have a question just
for
the people who speak. Is it possible we can also turn on their video if they choose to have their video on?
I don't know. I don't think we are able to do that. There's a whole process where you have to make somebody a co-host and then it's hard to do.
You could just go to the participants section and then you click the video.
It's not giving me the option to turn people's video on.
Do you think it is, Ben? You think it's possible?
I can't even select the participants. Oh, there we go. I could try.
In any case, do we have anybody who would like to raise their hand?
I just want to say it might be doing that because we're currently screen sharing. And when you're screen sharing, it affects a lot of other things.
I checked at the beginning of the meeting and I was unable to, it didn't give me an option to turn on people's video. So we could see if screen sharing off if I made a mistake, but I think for the way the meeting is set up, we don't have, the host doesn't have the ability to force people to ask people to turn their video on or to turn it on for them.
Again, it's unfortunate. We've had a number of Zoom bombers over the last few meetings, so we are trying out this format this evening.
I can actually I can globally allow everyone to turn on their video.
And I think that's what we are trying to get away from.
Right, that's my only choice.
Okay, in any case, seeing no hands, I'm going to say thank you so much to Devinder. Devinder, did you want to just give that email address one more time? If people wanted to submit questions or comments, you can just verbally say it if you have it.
Hold on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
No,
to.
I wrote it down. It's budget public comments at schools.nyc.gov.
Great. And we'll have Yvette post that on our website. And Devinder, I do believe we get a copy of your presentation. Is that correct? And we'll have that posted as well?
Oh, yes.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming tonight.
No problem. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you some other time.
Thank you, Devinder.
Absolutely.
You're very welcome. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye, Devinder. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, great. So next up, we are going to have our public session. Sheena, would you like to just announce the first few people? Oh, you know what? Actually, sorry. Before we start, I just want to, if people newly joined us, we are going to be starting our public speaking session. Anyone is allowed to sign up to speak on any topic. There are some resolutions, or one resolution and a letter that you're welcome to speak on that or really any other topic. The way to sign up to speak, if you go to CECD2.net and you click on our meeting, or you click on, excuse me, our agenda, see the agenda. In the middle of the agenda, after number 5, agenda item 5, there's a link that says to sign up for a public session. Click here. And you can sign up and Sheena will add your name to the list. So take it away. Oh, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, the first speaker is Julie Somerville.
Hi there, thank you so much. My name is Julie Somerville, and I have 2 kids at PS 290. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak, I really appreciate it. Today I'd like to raise awareness around the desire by many families to have the ability to opt in to in-person learning, that's a mouthful, in-person or hybrid this academic year. You know, as you know, parents only had one window to opt in November. You know, and back in November, I feel that many people didn't have the information they needed to make a good decision. And I feel that it's unfair that we're now stuck with remote learning for the rest of the year. You know, I feel the circumstances have changed since November, not least of all is the availability of the vaccine. Aside from academics, there's a definite social and emotional impact on our children. Additionally, I feel there are many families that just don't have the right tools for remote learning to be effective for their children. You know, while I think it's amazing that we're trying to offer more in-person learning to those who are already in, you know, hybrid or in-person cohorts, those of us who are in the remote cohorts are really being left behind. So in short, you know, I hope this can be incorporated into a resolution and rectified for those families who now feel more comfortable sending their children to school. And that's it. Thank you so much.
And I forgot to mention, Vincent, if you could keep time, do you mind doing that?
Yes, I've been keeping time.
Fantastic. So just for everybody's, you know, just so they know how this works in case you have not been here, Vincent will set the clock for 2 minutes. There will be a little beep at around 2 minutes. And then we really would hope that you could just wind down what you're saying fairly quickly. And then if Felicia Williams, I see that you've raised your hand. If you would like to add your name to the list, I guess Sheena can add it, but if you could go to CECD2.net, click on the agenda, and then click sign up for public speaking, that would be great.
Okay, the next person is Craig Slutskin.
Thank you, Ms. Tanakawa. My name is Craig Slutskin. I'm a parent at PS 340. I'll keep it brief. As the parent of a young child, I'm concerned about the changes to G&T. I think we are where we are this year, and that is, it is what it is. But as we have new chancellor and we'll likely have another one in January, I ask that the CEC take a proactive approach in listening to the CEC2 parents as to what they want for their children. I think it's important to remember that CEC2 represents CEC2 children and by extension their parents. I'm sure you're going to get many different views and that's obviously okay. Actually, it's great. But please remember to listen to all parents. I also do want to applaud the administration at my school, PS 340. It was announced today that several grades are transitioning to 5 days. Sadly, not my son's, but I realize the school did the best that it could with its enrollment. But I do encourage other schools to look at 340 as an example of trying to get as much in-person learning as possible for those who would like it. Thank you. Good night.
Next person is James Thompson.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I want to speak about the latest draft resolution. According to this draft resolution, in support of simplified process for families to opt out of standardized tests, in prior years, it states that low participation rates and testing were penalized. Also, NICED penalized districts and schools with low participation rates in testing. So I question, why do members of the CEC want to encourage families to opt out of standardized tests that can result in the state and city receiving less funding for education when funding for education will be so desperately needed as the city heads into a fiscal crisis? The reason the federal government is not giving waivers to the exam is because it will help them understand the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on education. City officials have said they want to close the COVID achievement gap. Well, you can't close a gap unless you know how wide it is. And it's harder to close a gap if we have less money to do so. I have years of experience reviewing operations and making recommendations for how they can be improved. I have never once recommended that they get rid of metrics and accountability. If anything, our world can use more of this. Having more may have reduced the impact of this global pandemic. Having more on policing may have prevented so many unnecessary deaths. Standards are the bedrock of society. In kindergarten, we learned that we should share and not hit each other. Our daily lives are safer due to standards that, for example, make sure a car ride or a meal doesn't kill us. And if we do get hurt, standards are in place to make sure the first responders, EMS, and doctors know how to help us. Millions of lives will be saved because of the standards that created a system that produced a safe and effective vaccine for COVID-19. Standardized tests were developed. Standardized tests were developed to stop education inequalities. At this point, we need to find out what impact this pandemic has had on our kids, and opting out of the standardized test is the last thing this council should be recommending. Thank you.
Next up is Janie Wong.
I don't see her anymore.
She might be under Lim. Let's see, let me see. Lim Fong Sim. Do you see that name?
I saw her before and I think she just disappeared.
Okay, so
Oh, I see Janie Huang.
Oh, you do? Where is she?
Well, on my
Janie,
second page.
if you can hear us, would you raise your hand so we can find you? And Felicia, I added you. There's Janie. You're unmuted.
Janie, we can't hear you if you're speaking. If you want to perhaps leave the meeting and then rejoin, and then we can slot you in if that's preferable. Great. Shino, do you want to just call the next name?
Shannon Borkowski.
Hi, my name is Shannon Burkowski. I'm the PTA co-president at the PS 183, and I wanted to talk today about the 10-day closure of school buildings for 2 unrelated COVID cases. We are on our 3rd 10-day closure of the year and our second since the beginning of 2021. We're talking about kids going back to school more often, and I commend Craig's school for getting some grades to 5 days a week, and we're looking forward to some of our grades finally getting to 2 cohorts from the 3 that they have been. But it doesn't really matter how many cohorts or how many days we're in school if the school keeps shutting down for 2 cases. 2 seems like an arbitrary number. We have over 400 children in person or in hybrid in our school, and 2 positive cases for 400 children doesn't seem like an appropriate percentage. The city re-examines rules and procedures throughout this pandemic, which they should be doing as we learn new information and new science comes out. Travel rules have changed and the mandatory quarantine days have changed and all that stuff has changed except for school rules. And this particular rule of a 10-day closure for only 2 positive cases does not seem like a rule that makes sense. Maybe it should be based on a percentage of kids that are in school. If we were at 400 kids, 2 per positive cases is like 1/4%. And it just doesn't seem like something that makes sense. We want teachers to be safe. We want students to be safe, but we want policies that make sense to keep people safe. And it should definitely be time for the DOE and everyone in the mayor's office to re-examine, revise this particular rule to keep our schools open as often as they can be open. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to apologize ahead of time for mispronouncing your name. Preeti Mahadevia.
Chino, I think you missed Kaushik Das.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Kaushik Das next. Sorry about that, my bad.
Kaushik, you can unmute yourself. I guess we can come back.
You want us to move to the next person, Emily?
I think so. I think we should.
So that's Preeti Mahadevia.
There's 3 Preetis. Do we know which one?
Oh dear.
There's 4 actually. I'll do the one with the picture. I'll try to
she
unmute the
raised
one.
her hand.
Great. Thank you, Preeti.
Go ahead.
I'm the real Slim Shady. Okay, Preeti. I am also a parent of a kindergartner at PS 183, also in our third 2-week closure in this school year because of 2 unrelated COVID cases. At this point, my son has been in school for about 13 days in 3 whole months. And again, this is 2 unrelated school closures that are, 2 unrelated COVID cases that are impacting 400 students. What I want to know is why there isn't a more reasonable solution, like closing down a specific class, or quarantining the kids that have direct contact, or just the cohort. It doesn't take 2 weeks to clean 2 classrooms. And according to health experts, young children in schools are not what's driving the community spread. I want to know why this policy, which we're being told is a mandatory policy from the DOE and the DOH, why this hasn't been revisited and why this is just indiscriminately being applied to all cases that might not be the same. I want to just add that we're struggling as working families. I'm forced to choose between work and my son's education. And then without my income, there's a whole lot of other choices that add to the stress and opportunities that we have as a family and that we can provide to our child. What's really heartbreaking is that we see private schools with smaller classroom areas than ours staying open with no problems. We're seeing daycares that have functioned throughout this year that haven't even closed once, and that includes Learning Bridges that stays open. So it makes no sense that our school system, our public school system, is failing us right now, that we're not going 5 days a week. And it just right now seems like we need to be able to pay for private school education to have our kids in school, which is really outrageous. It's not even at this point choosing between one opportunity and another, but just education at all. I'll just quickly add that if we're being able to go to restaurants and bars and shop, our kids should be given a greater priority than that. And I would really love to understand why this is happening and why we can't open schools 5 days a week. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to go back to Jenny Huang. Sorry.
Yes, I saw that. Before we unmute, I just want to, we are getting towards the bottom of the list, I believe, right, Chino?
We have another sheet.
Oh, you do have another sheet. Okay, great. But I just want to say, if anyone, let's say a last call, if people would like to sign up, please go to CECD2.net, click on the agenda, and then click on sign up for public speaking, please. Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I was having lots of technical difficulty. I'm Janie Wong. I'm a parent of 3 kids in District 2 schools, twins in 5th grade and 1 in 7th grade. I think sibling preference is an important step in helping families recover from the pandemic. I do worry about my kids taking public transportation to and from school. I think it's definitely less safe these days than it was, let's say a year ago before the pandemic. I think there is safety in numbers, and I would feel more comfortable if all my kids went to the same school and they could travel to and from school in the morning and back home. I also think that, sibling priority would alleviate me from being in multiple places at once. I could go to work, they could all go to school together. Also, I think sibling preference provides a built-in support system, as the older sibling can provide information and help in how to navigate a new school. So I support the sibling preference letter, and hopefully the DOE would take that in consideration. Thank you.
Okay, should we try Kaushik again?
That would be great.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hi, my comments will be brief because I'm on the road. I'd just like to add on to a couple of speakers' comments. One, I would like to add on to Craig Slutskin's comment. I think G&T is an important program, and I don't understand why in any past situations or present the current G&T families aren't addressed more, as well as G&T principals. In the SDAG that people like to bring up all the time, there was not a single supporter of a G&T program, including G&T principals. I would like to see that not repeated again in the future. I'd also like to say I don't understand why people would not be interested in state testing again. I think it is important to understand what kids have not learned this year, as well as to plan for the future. And I don't know why anyone would support a resolution that came up from a chancellor who has been widely divisive and not supported by really either side on this in the CEC Council. So that's it. I said my comments to be brief. I wish I had more time to add further comments, but like I said, I'm on the road and I gotta get going. Apologies.
Liz Amadio.
Liz, you can unmute yourself.
Liz, for some reason, we can't hear you. Okay, perhaps we can go to Felicia and then we'll come back to Liz.
Yes. Good evening. I wanted to know about the services with the special education students. And I know that when it comes to testing and everything else, it is not provided for the students. And I wanted to know why is that, and why students not getting the services that is needed for them.
Felicia, usually we this is a public session where we make public comments, and it isn't a back and forth. But since you have questions specifically about special education and services, I think that it would be great to put you in touch with somebody who can help you work something out with, if your school is having trouble providing services or if there's something that you need specifically. So perhaps I can give you my CEC email, or you can get in touch with info@cec.org. Hold on. And my email.
CECD2.net.
Sorry. So let's see. I'm just trying to think of the best way. I don't know, Felicia, if you have a pen and paper, but info, INFO at CECD2.net. And I see you have your hand raised again. Robin, do you want to unmute Felicia one more time?
Emily, I'm also happy to help her.
Great.
It's not just that. It's not just me. I mean, my son is getting what he's getting. I'm talking about there's parents that have been having a lot of issues, and I've been hearing parents, complain about with their kids and stuff, not getting the help that is needed, not even just special education, even in regular ed, that some kids, I hear that there's not enough support or whatever the situation may be in some schools, especially some of the high schools. Well, my high school is getting the support that, they're doing what they need to do for the students. Me being a PTA vice president of my son's school. So they're doing a lot of stuff, to help the kids. But when I hear other parents talk about their schools not doing certain things, or not receiving laptops and not receiving a lot of things.
Got it.
And this is a very big problem.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to jump in, but Felicia, I think we know each other. This is Kelly calling, or Kelly McGuire. Hey, I've got your email. I'm gonna reach out to you, okay?
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Felicia.
Next speaker is Alex Shilkrat.
Oh, guess who I spoke to, Mr. Kelly?
Okay, I'm good. My name is Alex Shilkrat, and I'm a parent of a child in District 2, PS 77, and I want to comment on several issues and chime in to some previous speakers. First is in opt-out testing to make it easier, and I think it's a very wrong move. In statistics, there is a saying, no data, no problem. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, the first thing that when you come to the meetings, you have to say, I am an alcoholic. In order to fix the problem, you have to know what the problem is. We know that in New York public schools, half of the students cannot read or do math at a grade level. The only way to independently, unbiasedly test all the students is through standardized testing. Standardized testing eliminates variation, between socioeconomic factors, between bias of evaluators, and it allows to test students independently. This way, if you allow standardized testing, then you know how much, this COVID epidemics, school closures, failing the kids, and probably people don't want to know. And that's why they want to make opt-out testing easy, because they don't want to face the problem, how much kids are failing. 25% of the children never logged into any Zoom sessions this year. In order to start fixing, have to understand what the problem is. And second thing, is a quick plugin to support GNC programs. When parents were applying for GNC, there were 8,000 applications for, small number, for 1,000 seats. This year, there will be 10,000 applications. So competition is fierce. Why? Because GNC schools work. And instead of expanding GNC schools,
Next speaker is Hillary Grand.
Hillary, are you able to unmute? Okay. Did you find Hillary, Len, and she's just having trouble?
There's Michael Grand. Let me unmute him to see if. Michael, can you hear me? I'm trying to.
Yes, that's me. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Hi, everybody. Thank you. So I'm also a parent at PS 183, and I'm also quite upset around the third 10-day closure this school year. My daughter's pretty much been in school 15 days since the beginning of the year, and it's unacceptable. She's in kindergarten, and it's honestly getting to be educational neglect at this point. Children need kids to socialize with, and she's honestly getting so upset. My husband and I work full time, and she has absolutely no one to socialize with. On top of it, the remote learning only goes until like 12:15. I mean, it's not even a full day, and it's actually forcing my husband and I to have to get tutors to come. So when you're saying about kind of bringing in this extra funding for teachers, quite honestly, that funding should really come back to the parents if you're not going to open 5 days a week, because it's a tremendous expense for working parents. And you are forcing parents to basically, and working moms to basically have to choose between working and not working, because we're really not able to give our kids the attention that they deserve. It's not okay. You know, I think given everything that's going on, I think for PS 183 specifically, I know it's an issue around the size of the classrooms. Something needs to be reassessed. The protocols need to change. There's vaccinations out there, and I know a ton of parents within this school, we would sign waivers. So we need, like, one day, my daughter has been maybe in school 1 day a week sometimes, but then you close the school. You know, now we're first getting to 2 days a week. That's what other schools had in the heart of COVID. It's not acceptable. It's nowhere near the 5 days that she needs to be. And our school is so far behind. What are you guys doing to get PS 183 up to the standards that these kids deserve?
So the last person is Liz Amadiel.
Unmute, Liz.
Okay, well, maybe ask her to, we'll try her during the second session.
Yes, I just wanted to announce that actually, that for everyone, anyone who, oh, did she get to unmute? Nope. For anyone who didn't get a chance to speak or was having some technical difficulties, we do have a second public session, and you can sign up for that. Thank you so much, Chino and Len. We really appreciate you running that so smoothly. Okay, I'm going to go on to the president/vice president report. This week it's going to be the vice president report. It is, I am taking over for Ed today, so I don't have as much as he usually has, but wanted to let people know, obviously, in middle schools have opened. They're about 2 weeks in. And it was just announced this week that high school will be opening. Most high schools will be open for some portion of the week by the end of the month. Pre-K enrollment is also open, and G&T enrollment. Those are both going on right now. If people have questions about how to enroll in any of those, or any further questions about what's going on with enrollment issues and how to enroll, they can contact Jennifer Greenblatt. Jennifer, if you could give a wave. She's our family leadership coordinator, and she you can find her on the DOE website and contact her if you have any questions. You could also always email us and we can forward things on to her. Our website again is CECD2.net. We also do have a newsletter that goes out with announcements and other things. I'm just trying to think. I think that's about it.
Oh, Emily, you had asked me, I'm sorry, I just saw your text, when the CEC
I was
candidate
just going to
forum
say
is going
that
to
was
be.
the other thing. The CEC enrollment for running for CEC for the council for the next term is closed. But there will be somebody, I believe, at next month's meeting who will explain how to now vote for the candidates. And Len is just going to jump in and say something about our candidate forum.
I actually am not part of the planning process, but it's my understanding that Jennifer Greenblatt and Matthew Chook are going to be working. Then maybe Jennifer can fill us in, but I don't think they have the details at this point.
Right, so the candidate forum or forums, we're not sure yet, will be held in April. More information to come on that, and each of the candidates will be able to speak at that meeting. I don't have any further details yet. I don't want to give you wrong information.
No, that's great. Just to know that that's upcoming, and then there will be a period of voting, of course.
If I can ask Jennifer Greenblatt a quick question.
Sure.
Do you know what how many candidates there were in the there are in the D2?
I do. I don't know if that information is public yet, so I don't want to share it because they're in the middle of vetting everybody.
Okay.
So they're a certain number, but there may be people that are disqualified when they go through the vetting, and that should be out in the next day or two.
But I do know, Ben, that there was a record number citywide of people who enrolled this year.
Great, excellent.
There was 1,750 applicants for the city of New York.
Wow. And how's that compare in previous years?
Total, I'm not sure how it compares because I usually focus on District 2, but District 2 is far greater than it has been in previous years. And the last, the highest I think we ever had was 72, 76, somewhere around there, but it's higher than that.
Wow. Excellent.
Sure.
Great. And that's really the end of my report this evening. And so I would like to introduce Kelly McGuire, our District 2 Superintendent, for the Superintendent's Report.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks to the entire CEC for having me this evening. And again, just want to thank Katarina for joining us tonight. Jennifer and I interviewed a wide slate of different high school applicants who were interested in being a part of the CEC, and just in a very, very impressive group of young people. And we're so appreciative of you being here tonight with us for the first meeting of your time on the CEC. So I'm going to start just by sharing a little story. In 1987, I clearly remember sitting in the school library of Capitol Middle School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was 24 years old and about to start my first year of teaching. I was full of excitement and enthusiasm for the work I was about to begin. By the end of my first month of teaching, I was overwhelmed by the amount of work it was taking me to plan high quality lessons for my students. My wife, whom I had met that first year of teaching and who was about to begin her third year of teaching, still jokes with me about coming over to my apartment at about 9 o'clock at night and finding me putting on a pot of coffee, getting ready for an evening of grading student papers. When I reflect on that first year of teaching at Capitol Middle School, the face of Mrs. Jackie Collins quickly enters my mind. Mrs. Collins, whom everyone called her, even Principal Gillette, was a 20-year veteran teacher of middle school English. Mrs. Collins was assigned to me as a mentor in that first year. Mrs. Collins taught me how to quickly and clearly convey to my students the most important learning outcomes we were learning in class that day. She was the first person who introduced me to the idea of a teacher as facilitator. Talk as little as possible, she would say. The students are the ones who we should hear from as they are processing and considering what they are learning. This guidance gave me a much clearer understanding of what it meant to create quality learning opportunities for my students. And with this clarity, I became much more efficient with my planning. No more late night pots of coffee. Mrs. Collins was also the teacher leader in charge of the Capital Middle School English department. She would routinely break us up into grade level teams so we could develop essential questions for the stories our students read in class. The answers to our curriculum questions are in the room, everyone. Let's figure it out. This notion of the answer being in the room is an adage that has been echoed by many New York City school leaders. It is a belief that I carry close to my heart in my work as an educator, and it is what prompted me to launch an advisory group of teacher leaders with whom I am meeting regularly to examine key questions and challenges in our district. We are reviewing data, sharing practices, and hopefully some of them will be willing to engage in district level reopening plans. I'm really excited for our work together. Over the past few weeks, there were several other key announcements made by the Central Department of Education. We learned that as of March 15th, Chancellor Carranza will be leaving the Department of Education, and Misha Ross Porter, currently the Executive Superintendent for all community school districts in the Bronx, will take over as Chancellor. Last week, I, along with other superintendents, had the opportunity to meet the future Chancellor Porter. We learned that atop her highest priorities for New York City is the safe return to in-person schooling for all children and the advancement of equity-based initiatives started by Chancellor Carranza. We expect to learn much more about our new chancellor's priorities when she officially takes over city leadership. I'd like to add that I think it's important to note, that the tone of the meeting that we had with Ms. Porter was one of great appreciation for her. She is a leader who has truly walked the walk of school reform. It is that reputation that has led so many veteran school leaders from all over New York City to enthusiastically endorse her as chancellor. Almost every principal and superintendent I speak with has had a positive experience with her. They are inspired by her work. My experience with Misha, this is the name that everybody seems to call her, is that she served as an advisor to a project I did with several other principals a few years ago. She was thoughtful and appreciative, but she pushed our project to be better than it was when we first presented it. We also have several updates about our school reopening. The high school, under the leadership of the District 2 Superintendent, is Clinton High School. Last week, I spoke with Principal Jonathan Levin, and he is looking forward to the reopening. As we know, the numbers of high school age students who have opted for full remote learning across the city is quite high. Because some of his students have opted for full remote learning between last November's closure of high school for in-person learning and this reopening, Principal Levin is working with his administrative team to determine the number of high school students who will be returning to the building and the corresponding program model that will enable him to safely bring the greatest number of students to school for learning in the building. Also this week represents the third week of in-person learning for our middle school students. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit a few middle schools, and it was a joy to see them in action. Our middle schools are bringing back many more students for many more days per week than they had previously been attending in the fall. Almost all of our schools that serve middle schoolers are able to reduce the number of cohorts from 3 to 2, resulting in 2 to 3 days of in-person learning instead of 1 to 2 per week. Additionally, 15 of our 19 schools that serve middle-aged students are able to offer significant groups of students 5 days per week of in-person learning. While every school would like to do this, it is primarily physical space and the large percentage of students who have opted for in-person learning that make expanding the number of 5-day per week students challenging. I do, however, expect that the middle schools will follow a similar course of programming that the elementary schools did. As students and teachers settled into their programs, principals were able to identify ways to expand in-person learning. In the past 2 weeks in our elementary schools, the number of students learning in person 5 days per week has expanded. While all schools wish that they could offer 5 days of in-person learning for any parent who would like this option for their child, resources vary greatly from school to school. I want to assure you that our district and borough teams continue to support principals and their leadership teams with this work. In the last 2 weeks, we also learned of the reinstatement of evaluative visits and observations in schools. Principals will resume teacher evaluations, which were suspended last year when the pandemic hit, and superintendents will start evaluative visits to principals. While they may not have been evaluative, visits to classrooms and schools did not cease over the past year. I spoke last month of the structures we have in place for collaborative learning through visits to schools and classrooms. These have continued, and actually both teacher and principal observations are now more important than ever. District 2 principals, teachers, and I are all on the same page. We want to use this time to both accelerate student learning to the best of our ability, while also learning to perfect the practices that we want to take with us into the future. Finally, I do want to report out regarding COVID classroom and school closures. The Department of Education has a website onto which anybody can go to review the number of classroom and school closures due to confirmed cases. The numbers are daunting, and when a parent hears that their child's class or school has been closed, it is certainly upsetting. I myself have experienced this with both of my children. I want to share that the policies related to the impact of confirmed cases on school closures are continuously being reviewed in new guidance from health professionals, including the Department of Health and the Health and Hospital Corps and Test and Trace are all reviewing these policies regularly, and they are being considered by the Department of Education Central Office. When I think about the school closures, a few things come to mind. First, I do recall an article written back in August about reopenings in Germany. The main finding from that reporting was that schools can and should reopen, but the school year may be a series of ups and downs, with a lot of energy placed on managing confirmed cases and outbreaks. That certainly is the experience of our teachers and principals and families now. I'm also reminded that while school policies may differ in different parts of the state and country, all schools continue to be impacted by confirmed cases of COVID-19. A friend of mine who pays an astronomical tuition for his daughter's private middle school still deals with class and school closures. The bottom line is that things are getting better. We just wish that they would get better faster. Anecdotally, just yesterday, I reviewed 3 quick emails. I will say this though, anecdotally yesterday, I did receive 3 quick emails from the Situation Room, all about next steps following confirmed cases in schools. A couple of weeks ago, seeing these emails would leave a pit in my stomach, for they most certainly would signal the need for a 10-day closure. However, one after another of these emails pronounced, schools cleared for reopening tomorrow. I'm going to stay steady and not get my hopes up too high, but perhaps this is a sign of events to come. We are all looking forward to returning to the stability of our schools. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and I appreciate the beautiful way in which you're telling us a story, because I feel like that is such a great way to be able to enter and listen. Are there any council members who would like to ask Kelly questions? Robin?
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks.
So my question is about G&T. I know that enrollment sign up for families that are interested in G&T is now open, and the DOE's website says that students enrolled at pre-K, UPK sites, schools, their teacher, once the parent or guardian has filled out the form, it's up to the child's teacher to fill out a questionnaire about the child to determine eligibility. So actually my first question is just, does that apply only to DOE run pre-K sites, or does it also include the NICE sites as well?
There are opportunities for these assessments to be done for any child in New York City. Some can be done directly at the pre-K sites, but then there are also additional resources for parents of children who don't currently attend DOE school.
Right. And I guess I know that for kids that are just like, let's say in a private pre-K or don't attend a preschool at all, there's going to be someone from Central that does a live interaction, a live remote interaction. And I was just wondering if the children at the NICE sites are which category they fall under. The ones that get assessed by Central through the interview, or the ones whose personal teachers fill out a form created by Central.
Yeah, my understanding is that it would be Central, but I can get back to you to confirm that for sure.
Okay. And so my next question is, do you know if this form already exists? Do you know who designed it? Do you know if schools with UPK, with, official DOE, either with a school-based UPK or our peak pre-K centers, if they have access to it already? And will teachers be getting professional development on delivering this particular form?
I've heard that there absolutely will be training around use of the form and the process by which kids are assessed and evaluated. I myself am not part of any kind of advisory team for G&T, and I have not seen any kind of forms or drafts thereof, but I would assume that that would be coming very soon.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Sure.
Hi, Kelly. Quick question. Just
wait,
for
Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, is this on G&T specifically following Robin? Because Len had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. No, it's
That's
not.
okay.
Tom can go first if he wants. It's not a big deal.
It was just a quick question, just for opting in for in-person learning. Is that done on a decision made on a citywide basis, or is it District 2 decision and for District 2 schools? And in either case, are we going to have a date where parents can again opt into in-person learning just because it came out of the crowd?
Yeah, I have not heard of any. It's a decision that is made by the city, and I think made at City Hall. And so I have not heard yet of any change in policy. So to my understanding, there is not yet a plan for opting back in. Those of us who do follow the news hear that it's something that is sometimes seems like it's being considered, but I haven't heard anything yet. And so as of now, the official policy is that there will not be another opt-in period.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lon.
Sure.
So I want to echo the frustration that we've heard from a couple of parents tonight, because I'm in the exact same boat about schools being closed. One of my children is a third grader at PS 158. This is the third time also, as I think we heard from parents at 183, that school's been closed. And quite frankly, I'm skeptical we're ever going to have 5 days a week, even though the plan is to open that school 5 days a week in the middle of March. So I'd like to know, is there anything we can do? Are you lobbying right now? I mean, I just hope you understand the frustration of us parents when we see these schools being closed constantly for, just 2 cases. I think the standard is so low that bar is always never going to be met. And we're looking forward to having very few days in school between now and the end of this year. So I'd like to know what, if anything, you're doing. And also, I was just curious about the percentage or the numbers of schools right now in District 2, because I'm aware also of a Wagner Middle School, I was told, is closed also. So I just think something's got to be done about the standards. And I'd like to know what you would recommend or what steps are being taken to see if we can change those rules, or at least lobby on behalf of our parents.
Wagner, just to clarify, and I know this is not the point of your comment, but Wagner did reopen. They were thankfully one of the schools that I got an email about being cleared to open. But I hear you, and I understand the frustrations that people are experiencing. And, when I reflect on it, hearing about the need to close a school with such short notice, it seems it's just an overwhelming thing to have to think about. I was on the phone last night with a principal very late who had to, inform children who are in a class. Thankfully, that school only needed to close one class, but in short notice, he needed to get in touch with those families, have that conversation, which no principal wants to have, but is certainly following the policies, which is the same position that I'm in right now too. And I am in a lot of different conversations with folks at the central level, and you hear like a bunch of different things, right? Like we hear about the numbers of teachers and staff that are being vaccinated, and that is incredibly positive, and it's definitely moving us in the right direction toward being able to either reopen for more children or change different policies. But right now, what we're hearing is that these policies are made by a consortium of different city agencies, and they are reviewing the data and reviewing the policy. And as of yet, there is no change. But I know that there are a lot of people at all levels who are looking forward to that, and just want to make sure that it is being done safely and in a way that where there is no regret. And so I will be the first to share any kind of updates with the CEC and the broader community that I hear of. But it is definitely, people are definitely being heard, and I think that's important. I think it's important for us to keep listening and for us to communicate what we're hearing.
Do you know how many schools are closed right now? I'm just curious. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yes. No. I mean, I have a record of all of them, but I didn't count them up prior to the meeting. Honestly, I think it is just 2. I think it is just 2, but I can confirm that, let people know. The emails sometimes do fly fast and furious, but I'm pretty sure it's just 2. I think it is just 158 and 183. Jennifer, I don't know if you've heard anything different about it either.
I think that's correct.
So I just have rotten luck. That's it.
Ben, did you want to ask
But
a
great
question?
places to be otherwise.
Wonderful.
Those are great
Thanks.
places to be otherwise.
Yes, Superintendent McGuire. Do you know how many teachers in D2 and or students since schools have opened, since the school year started, how many of them have been hospitalized due to COVID?
How many teachers have been hospitalized?
Yes, from COVID.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
All right, because the Department of Health does provide the stats on how many 0 to 17-year-olds have been how many cases hospitalized and deaths. I think there's like 4 citywide for with no circumstances, underlying circumstances. So, but
yeah,
I just to get an idea of how much has it hurt the student population and teachers and administration while we've had this hybrid blended learning, because when you hear that there are students who've been in school the same amount of days that we've had CECD2 meetings since the school year started, that's just a shocking number, and we have to start putting things into perspective. And I feel awful for people who've suffered. I'm in that boat too. I have family, but we have to. I don't know if you can find out some stats, so because we have to look at scientifically here, because the data is here.
Yeah, my sense is that specifically finding out about different Department of Ed staff members being hospitalized, I think that there's probably a lot of that information that is private and not available. It probably, but I think that we probably can get some, some general numbers on that.
You can get de-identified data there should be enough de-identified data. You know, I'm not asking for schools, I'm asking for the district-wide. And but my local Trader Joe's has been open nonstop since September, with thousands going in every day. And I'm sure if they've been losing employees, they would have been closed down. So, you know, parents are hurting.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you.
Is anybody else who would like to ask a question? Otherwise, we are going to move on to committee reports. Great. So committee reports. Is there somebody who would like to report from Students in Temporary Housing Committee? I know you guys had a meeting right after last month.
Sure. Yeah, it was a productive meeting. It's a small group. We typically do it monthly. The day after these meetings, we're going to skip this month's meeting just because of prior commitments elsewhere for many of us. But other than that, we're just working on getting headsets to students in temporary housing to begin with, soliciting donations. So if you know anybody willing to donate a large sum of headsets, please join our next meeting. They're definitely needed. Ushma, I don't know if you want to add anything.
The only other thing I'd add is that we had a very interesting discussion about how to try and mobilize more tutoring to these students, along with people who have had a long history of doing it successfully and the barriers that they have had to go through and how they've managed to be successful. And we also heard from our last student member, Violet Becker, who we're very proud to hear from. And she has been working together with other high school students to put together a tutoring program. So it was really wonderful to hear about students helping students and the means by which we could help to try and connect people and further help our students in temporary housing.
Oh, and Ushma, what was the name of the tutoring? I think we promised to plug them, and now I forgot their name offhand.
Shino, do you remember Violet's tutoring group?
Oh, hers is student to student, I think.
Right.
I think it was the other one that had more capacity, though, right?
Oh,
right. From Judy.
Yeah.
I'll have to search.
Hearts of Gold, is that it?
That's one of her programs, but I think the tutoring program is separate.
Right.
I have notes somewhere, or maybe Josephine, if she's here, can tell us later.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are doing really good things out there. We're just trying to connect everyone.
Great. Thanks, guys, so much. I don't know if there are any other committees that met this month. I know Students with Disabilities Committee did meet this month. We had a focus on the ASD Nest program. We had a really nice turnout of about 35 people. We were very grateful, Kelly, for you having attended. A number of different people asking different questions about the program. A few people, a group of people actually from the Upper East Side who were looking for a new program, but really, I think from all over the city, really saying, or not all over the city, all over the district, saying that more ASD Nest programs, please. And we actually also were really grateful to have an ASD Nest teacher attend the meeting and talk a little bit about her experience as a teacher and some of the training that she has received. So all in all, it was a really great night, and a few of us. Yeah.
Can I ask a really basic question about ASD Nest?
Yes.
Are they part of the parent school with the same principal?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes.
And so and are there do classrooms mix like an ICT kind of a situation?
It is an inclusion program. So it's a program that is within a school. And it is everybody who's in the building is trained in how to interact with students who are on the spectrum and who fit into that that part of the spectrum that program is. So they all get trained literally from the bus driver who's dropping off to the school security officer to the gym teacher, all the way through. And then not every classroom is an ASD Nest classroom, but that school would have a certain number of ASD classrooms. There would be 4 students who are on the spectrum in that class. And then it is a smaller class size. I believe it's 15, Kelly. I don't know if you remember. I believe it's 15. And 4 of the students are on the spectrum. And then it's nobody else. It's not like an ICT class where there would be other kids who have other learning disabilities. But then there are 2 teachers in that classroom specifically for those kids. So it's a really fantastic program, and it allows, as I said, the inclusion model to really flourish. A group of us, there were about 3 women who volunteered to help me not only learn more about ASD Nest, but also present a resolution here. We started meeting to try to hone in on some ideas specifically about how to make that program a little bit more robust in District 2. And by robust, meaning existent. And that's my report. And I have not set the next meeting date, but I will get a save the date out through the vet as soon as I pick a date.
Emily, I'll just make a quick, sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
Was the tutoring program with Judy Gross at the JCC, Marlene Myerson, JCC? Okay. I couldn't find a name for the specific tutoring program, but they are working with a couple of our schools.
Oh, yes. And Shino, if you would like to give us a little report, I know that you have been learning some things about charter.
Yes, so just a very quick updates. Actually, the Diversity Committee had the Know Your Rights presentation.
That's right.
From the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. We had it in Spanish. We did outreach pretty decently citywide, but we didn't really have anybody come, which is sad, but we have it recorded. So we're going to post it on the website, and I'll do a second outreach just to send the link to the video. We had one in Chinese as well, in Mandarin last month, and that was the series. So that's that. Switching gears, charter school. There is a school called Life Sciences Secondary School on the Upper East Side. It used to be a 6 to 12 school, which meant that it was a CEC District 2 school. And several years ago, a proposal was made to truncate the school to 9 to 12. So currently it's a 9 to 12 high school, but it's still under the CECD2 jurisdiction because we never officially changed it to CCHS, but it is under Superintendent Vivian Orland's jurisdiction. 3 years ago, there was a proposal to co-locate a charter school, East Harlem Scholars Academy, temporarily while that school was building its own building in a private space. It was supposed to be for 2 years. Then I guess because of the pandemic, the construction got delayed. So the proposal is to extend their stay 1 year, but also bringing in about 100 additional students into the building for 1 year. So we had the hearing, it was last night, and I attended. I didn't share any position on this because we don't have a position. We didn't debate it as the council, but I did share some concerns that are pretty standard concerns. One of them is that they are relying on the Blue Book figures. And for high school Blue Book figures, they use the class size of 30 in each class, which is too big. So when the DOE says there's capacity in the building at 75% utilization, that's really not accurate. If the school's at 75% capacity utilization based on the Blue Book formula, then I would say that school is full. But that's one of the reasons why they're moving ahead with this. The educational impact statement is very lacking. They didn't mention anything about how the first 2 years of co-location went, what didn't work, what should be changed. all that stuff. So that was something that I attended on behalf of the CEC without sharing any position on the proposal itself. And we have a city council hearing on the DOE budget and capital plan budget on the 23rd of March. So if people are interested in signing up to talk about the budget that you heard from Davinder earlier today, or the capital plan, or both, there is an opportunity for people to speak up. That's it.
Thank you so much, Shino. And then lastly, I'd like to just throw to Ushma to announce an event that we are sponsoring.
Yes, here's the flyer. We will be sending this out tomorrow. If perhaps Robin can help me, if that is still away. That I have been working with a group of people, we're calling ourselves the Vaccine Awareness Coalition, to put together a really terrific slideshow that has information about the viruses, the vaccines, how they were tested, common myths and truths. And so my colleagues Kiara and Fiona will be presenting this. I will moderate this. This is something that I've been working on together with CCHS and with the Manhattan and Queens High School President's Council, because the idea is to do both community outreach, but to try and establish a stable of vaccine ambassadors that are aware of all the things related to the vaccines that have been approved in the US, how they were tested, and what their safety and efficacy profiles look like, and how to talk about that. So this will be happening next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So this will soon be up on our website, and a flyer will be sent around. I note that one of the other CECs is also doing something similar on the exact same night. I hope that both of us will be able to record ours and be able to learn from each other.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Ushma. And I'm really excited that we were able to sponsor this event.
So am I. Thank you.
Great. So now we're going to turn to our discussion of the siblings priority letter and resolutions. So I'd like to throw it open. Shino, I don't know if people have questions for Shino, or if anyone has a comment that they want to kick us off with.
Just a naive comment. Is this signing on as a whole CEC or as individual members?
I think that would be the idea. I mean, we're always free to participate as individual members, but I think it would be great if we can come to some sort of consensus to be able to sign on.
This would allow us to put it on like CEC letterhead and say, this is from the CEC2 versus, hi, we're on the CEC and me and Ushma and Shino and Eric and Vincent or whoever like this idea.
Right.
Got it. I can't recall sorry, Eric, just one last thought.
No, please.
Does this have a carve out for some of the more specific things? Like currently, if we're going to keep going with specialized high schools, that's probably not going to work to give sibling priority to those high schools. Or am I being naive?
The letter doesn't have that.
Okay.
And that was, Ushma, just my discomfort with the letter is I'm certainly supportive of siblings attending school together, but in a screened environment, I am uncomfortable giving priority into screened programs for siblings. I think that that leads you to a situation where you're screening students of giving siblings a priority into a school that sits outside of the rubric. So, that's my discomfort on why a sibling would, get a slot in a school before, another student. So, certainly I understand it at the elementary school level, but as you go into middle and high schools in screened environments, I'm just not comfortable with sibling priority.
If I could jump in, I'm going to agree with Eric there. This letter kind of speaks of equity. And the fact that it derides, screen schools in the middle of it, but it's at the same time supporting the sibling preference for it. I think portions of the letter don't even logically make any sense. Like when it speaks to 73% of students in New York City considered to be economically disadvantaged, and 85% are students of color, and not extending sibling priorities to these middle and high school students is disproportionately affecting low-income students of color. That's not how proportions work. So it wouldn't be disproportionate just because there's more of these students that I noted. And just to the fact that it's either you're supporting equity, which could be your goal, or you want sibling preference, either one, but you can't have both at the same time. And I think that's what this letter is trying to do. But as Eric was saying, I mean, especially in the middle schools, right? Because you have zone schools. So if you want to be equitable, those students, if you consider the students disproportionately disadvantaged to not be going to screen schools, then by having a sibling priority, it's naturally against equity because those students are already going to zone schools and already have preference. So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Those are just my thoughts.
My quick thought is that I'm actually 100% behind this when it comes to middle school, high school, and I get that some of the concern here is about travel, as Janie Huang was making a comment on in the public speaking session. But I think once the time you're getting to high school age kids, I'm not personally nearly as concerned. I know that others might be. I'm very much behind this when it comes to actually middle schools, because I personally don't think we should have middle school screens, and this would be a means by which you could help to actually drive some equity there. But as written, I'm not sure to negative, personally.
Would anyone else like to speak on this?
Yeah, I can't support it as written either. I don't, definitely if it doesn't distinguish between the situation with unscreened and screened, and definitely if not for high school. I mean, honestly, even if it was high school, I could probably get behind it if there was no screening in high school. But as long as there's screening this year for high school, and as long as we don't have a permanent, a more permanent situation on middle school screening, I don't know, I can't support the letter the way it's written.
Great. I feel similarly in terms of all of the points that the author is making in terms of, just trauma that our kids go through, and wanting to be close to siblings, and going to and from school, and ease of getting children places, and being at parent teacher nights on the same time, and lots of things that can really, really help families. So I am, really for so many of the points that this parent is making, or the author and the supporters. So, and as a mom of twins, I also, often my kids wish that they went to the same school. But I do think that there are issues with it, perpetuating, especially, as we see the lawsuit being filed today, one of the most segregated school systems in the nation, if not the most. It's difficult to not see this as furthering to sort of cement some of these inequities. And so I don't know if there was a way to like carve that out, but as written, it's tough.
So let me offer my perspective as somebody who circulated the letter.
Yes.
I'm actually not in support of sibling preference at all. I feel the hardship, and I would actually consider it deeper for middle schools, but certainly not for high schools. I circulated it because I know that this was something that has come up by members of the public, and a couple of the members amongst ourselves. This was an issue that's been discussed, so I figured maybe we should discuss it. So I'm completely fine not signing on. That's like fine by me. The other reason that caught my eye is who signed it. It's really an interesting list of principals who signed on to this letter. So Humanities Prep, Eastside Community School, El Puente Academy, Central Park East, Castle Bridge School, Essex Street Academy. These are not your privileged schools, right? These are mostly Black and brown students. I think many of these are Title I schools. And I just found that interesting that these are the principals who are asking for sibling preferences. But in principle, I don't really support sibling priority, especially for high schools. And as Eric and Robin said, for screen schools, I don't really support it either. So we can move on to the resolution unless there are other members who'd like to weigh in.
Great. Do we need to take a vote on that? I mean, I think people sort of voted with their words, but I just wanted to make sure. Obviously,
we have to vote. It's a letter, so.
Right. Obviously, if there are people who want to sign on individually, but I do believe that we will pass on signing on to the letter as a council. Okay, if we would like to open the discussion on the resolution in support of simplified process for families to opt out of standardized tests.
So I'd like to get started. So just to clarify some points based on some of the public comments we heard. So this is not, obviously, obviously I'm not in favor of the testing this year, but this resolution isn't actually about the testing itself. It's really just about empowering parents to make a choice. So that's consistent with the position of our state's Department of Education and our city's Department of Education, what they think the efficacy of standardized testing is. And as a council, we've discussed a lot about making sure parents have all the information they need to make informed choices about their child's education. And we've talked a lot about transparency. And I just think this is part of that. In the past, the state and the city have had a vested interest in increasing participation rates. And this year, that's explicitly not the case, both because they've said they, as institutions, both individuals and the institution, NYSED, and well, I shouldn't speak for the DOE as an institution, but NYSED as an institution has said they don't believe that testing would be efficacious this year. So this is merely about saying this year that we should make sure that it's transparent, that parents understand what their rights are, and that they should have a low barrier to choosing to not participate. I want to clarify, I shouldn't have used the word penalized in the resolution. It did imply that I understand why one of the public speakers thought that there might have been a financial penalty associated with low participation rates. That's not the case. No, despite extraordinary opt-out rates in prior years in suburban districts, no school district or school has ever been financially penalized for its opt-out rates. And in fact, the danger is ending up on a school ending up on the state's list of schools that need improvement, and that actually comes with additional money. So I don't think that's never been twisted around as an incentive to opt out, but certainly the worst case scenario is ending up on this list and getting additional money. But in fact, what actually happens in the past with schools that have low opt-out rates, the state just initiates a multi-step plan to improve test participation. So it's safe to assume that the state would not you know, the worst case scenario would be that the state would ask schools to come up with a plan to increase participation rates starting next year. And given the position of the state on the test this year, that's an extraordinary unlikely scenario. Also, the US DOE has said that they will not grant rate waivers on the assessment requirement, but they will grant waivers on the accountability requirement. And the accountability requirement is where that participation rate comes into play. So it's clear to me that the US Department of Education is not going to be holding states responsible for low participation rates at individual schools or in districts this year, even though they are expecting the assessments to take place in some form. And finally, just a piece about, you know, the merit of a standardized test this year. And it's right there in the word standardized. To the extent that we believe standardized tests have value, and I know a lot of us do believe they have value, it's in the idea that the tests are administered in a standardized manner. And that won't happen this year because just throughout New York State, we have some schools that kids are going in 5 days a week, and those tests can be administered in person. And then we have districts like in New York where some kids are hardly going to school at all, where parents are refusing to send their kids into buildings. So the children will not be taking the tests in any kind of standardized environment. Some will be in person, some might be online, even if they say the entirety of the test is online. Remote, then there's absolutely no standardization, as we know, because kids are doing remote school in all kinds of different circumstances. So functionally, the data will be, as much as we want to get a snapshot of this year, there's not going to be the idea that like making it easy for parents to opt out will affect the data, assumes that the data would be good otherwise. And I don't believe it would be good otherwise. So essentially, I'm just trying to build on the values as a council that we've already established, which is empowering parents to make choices for their own what's best for their own child, trusting parents, trusting that the majority of parents can make those good choices, and having a low barrier, just leverage this NICSA account that we're already encouraging parents to create, and just put another form on there that's optional and that says, hey, I don't want my child to participate in the test this year.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone else? Glenn?
Yeah, so I have to respectfully disagree. I don't think, so my understanding about District 2 has always been that in terms of opting out, our district has probably had one of the lowest, if not the lowest overall opt-out rates on tests, probably in the city of New York. And that's for a variety of reasons. But we stand right now in the middle of an unprecedented crisis brought on by COVID, where you have remote learning, you have incredible problems caused by the lack of our students being in school, and issues involving social, emotional problems that are taking place every single day. And it's just amazing to me that you have a resolution, and I understand your discussion about representing the values of this council. I interpret this resolution as sending a message, and the message that it sends is that not about transparency, but it's about encouraging parents to opt out of tests because we don't value the tests. Now, in this crisis, I think anything that gives us an idea about where our children stand, because we honestly have no idea. I mean, the grading systems that have been enforced with meet standards, there's no way to tell right now subjectively where our children are in terms of what their reading levels are, what their math levels are. And I understand this test, and I will not be used for admissions purposes. So that issue is not there. But I think anything that provides us some form of data to ascertain where our students are is useful. And I think it's also an equity issue, because those who have most been affected by this crisis are those with the least amount of resources. They're the people who can't afford private tutors. They're the people who can't compensate for the lack of in-person schooling. They're the people who maybe don't have the resources to log on to every single day, or have these issues based on economics and all of those things related to that and the problems that causes. So for me, it's an equity issue. And I think it's irresponsible to try to encourage, because that's what we're doing, encourage people not to take tests or the state test when those tests actually can provide some sort of metric. It's not perfect. I agree with you there. The testing environment may not be perfect, but I, for one, would like to know where my child stands, at least on an objective basis compared to his peers. And I think that's important. And I think the messaging we're sending is wrong. And I understand that there's a faction of this council that is deeply opposed to standardized testing. I understand there's a faction of the council that believes that standardized testing is a screen, that it's unfair, that it's inequitable. But under these circumstances, I think we have a moral and ethical obligation, just based on equity, to do everything we can to try to use every tool and method and resource we can to identify the problems that our children have, and to target these tests can actually target deficiencies in their education. If they're behind, maybe they can get the resources they need. So I have to disagree with this resolution. I think it sends the wrong message, and we should be encouraging anything that can evaluate our children, whether it's perfect or imperfect, in this crisis.
Okay, thanks, Len.
I had a quick question, because I read a lot of the text in there, but the main point of the resolution was to make it easier for parents to opt out, correct? Okay, I've never tried to opt my kids out of any of the tests, partly because I feel like they're going to be tested for the next decade of their lives. They might as well get used to it now. However, it's not that hard to opt out, is it? I mean, I was just trying to look online, and all that a parent has to do is write a letter to their principal. Is that correct? Or has anyone here opted out and it's more complicated than that? I just want to understand from an operational point of view what this resolution is trying to enable in order to make it easier for parents.
Mechanically speaking, it's true. It is easy. If you have a principal like Mr. McGuire, my kid opted out in 8th grade, and it was a simple write a letter. There are a lot of principals out there who are not given the proper or correct information, and they fear that they will lose funding. Or this year, the message may not be clear that they will not be penalized to be put on that state list of schools that need improvement, that kind of consequences. That doesn't exist this year, at least. So I think principals may not have the right information to give to families. And those schools, I have heard from many families who complained that there was no information given. They tried to opt out and they were canceled not to opt out, even though they didn't feel comfortable taking the test. I mean, this is from the past year. So I don't know if that's a big issue in District 2. I do trust our principals to be giving the right information, but it's not as easy for many families, especially families who may not be English speakers. I think those are families who have a hard time. So it's mechanically easy, but in practice, it's not that easy for some schools, some families.
Might I ask Superintendent McGuire whether or not you have been talking with principals about this issue, giving them any guidance about how to talk to families about this?
Sure. I have not actually spoken with principals about this. We've had conversations about the message from the federal government in regards to not accepting New York State's waiver or request for waiver for the exams. But there, so far there have been no conversations at the central level regarding the assessments. Those conversations have been having had at the state and central level they haven't filtered down to us at the districts yet. The only conversations we've had are around the different possibilities for what could be used for the state assessments, the timing for them. There's just a lot of flexibility that was shared in that message from the federal government. And so we don't know what type of assessment we're talking about, the duration, the timeline. So a lot is really unclear right now.
Yeah, because there's several whereas clauses in this resolution that are really difficult to disagree with. Like if we can't necessarily even guarantee that all of the students in District 2 have devices and are tuning in, how are they going to be able to take a test? How is this going to be proctored? How is it going to be delivered? So I understand many of the different parts of this resolution and support them. But from a practical standpoint, I mean, when are they going to happen? I have kids at 2 different middle schools. One of them has, their teachers have already said they're starting test prep. The other one is staying mum. So it's been so unclear across our district. Are our students going to be prepared? Now, is test prep really what we should be doing? I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other topic, but it seems to be extremely uneven across our district.
If I could comment, I think that's the value in this test, that students shouldn't be preparing for these tests. There's definitely, undebatably, there's an achievement gap right here that we should be measuring, right? And I think the data is good. When students are in situations where they can't possibly focus, they'll do poorly on the test. And that doesn't mean they're bad students. That means that we need to be able to find these students and provide resource to them. As Len was pointing out, I think it is an equity issue here. And if we don't have any way to diagnose the problem, I think we're all worse off. That's just my 2 cents.
Can I?
I just wanted to add, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, sure. Oh, I was just going to respond to 1 or 2 of the thoughts. It was first Ushma to the question of the ease of opting out. Sometimes when I think about it, it actually does seem like it's a big step for a lot of parents to send an email to their principal. For whatever reason, that like speaking to someone in authority and putting their child out there as a student who doesn't want to participate in something that in many ways the school supports, I think is a big step for a lot of families. So that's just something to keep in mind, that I think by making the process not more anonymous, but in a different vehicle that doesn't require engagement with school administration could be something that's unsettling for some families. Just keep that in mind. The other thing, just to the comments from Tom and Len about understanding the achievement gap, I really believe that teachers are going to have that information best, right, this year. Teachers are going to know where their students are, and I don't see the value in getting this information in September when it's going to come, or October when you have a chance to go through the information. I think we need to be pushing and relying on the teachers that are with students every day to have that information. But what I will underscore is, all that aside, this certainly could be a proxy conversation for what we think about testing. But for me, it's really simple and straightforward, which is parents have a right to opt their students out of the state tests, and we should be making that easy, right? When anyone has a right to do something, we shouldn't be putting barriers or roadblocks or suppressing their ability to do that. And I do think that's why, to Ushma's question is, I do think that it's an extra step right now to write a letter to go to your administration. So to me, I want to make as many avenues open and as easy as possible for parents to exercise the right that they have. So that's just my thought.
I mean, just to push back a little, I mean, if that was the case, if we were just empowering parents and we wanted everybody to have equal access, then we would have been giving the G&T test universally, 10 years ago. We're not doing that. I mean, it's okay to think that opting out That's your opinion. I agree. But to say that we're doing everything universally to empower parents, I think is a little bit disingenuous, you know.
Well, I think it should be easy to sign up for the test. That's different. I think signing up for the test is everyone's right, and in no way would I take someone's ability to sign up for that. So I think that things should be open, and hopefully I've been consistent on that. That I think if something is a right, you shouldn't make it hard, whether or not the value you have on, you know, the thought behind that. And I don't know if I've been consistent, but I hope I would be. But, you know, my thought is that this is a right to opt out. And now we've got this school account. Let's throw it in there.
First of all, I just want to say, Alex S., we see your hand. We would love it. We see that you are signed up for the second public session, and we'll certainly call on you then.
I put him in the queue, so.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Emily, I'd like to address this resolution.
What? Okay, great. Maud, I would too, and so I'll go after you.
So there's a few concerns I have. One is I will just echo what Len Silverman said, which is simply that District 2 as a district has not been an opt-out district in any way, shape, or form. We have the lowest opt-out rate imaginable. We have, at my kids' elementary school, over the course of a decade, we had 2 parents opt out. So this again is a resolution that doesn't appear to be particularly responsive to or meaningful to actual District 2 parents, but is an anti-testing statement coming from a faction of CEC parents who are using things like, oh, it should be easier to opt out. Well, it should be easier to do a lot of things as a New York City public school parent, like get your kids in 5-day-a-week, face-to-face real school, which is what over 700,000 children don't have right now, the ability to walk through a door to go to their school 5 days a week. At a moment like this, where we are in the week, which marks the 1-year anniversary of almost 1 million students not having access to full-time school, the fact that we're pretending this is some sort of mechanical resolution to make it easier for parents when the people who are putting it forth are anti-testers, who have always been anti-testers, who are out of step with the majority of District 2 parents who are in favor of academic rigor and testing and assessments, when the fact that these assessments will be used to help children, particularly our most vulnerable children.
Maud, we just lost you.
I was just muted by somebody, which could only be one of our co-hosts, because that's the only person who has the power to mute people. So are you going to mute me again, or am I going to continue?
Please continue.
The most pressing concern of our school system right now is to get it open and get our children back into school. The fact that anti-testers are trying to pass a resolution that nobody's asked for, nobody wants, and doesn't particularly change much of anything about how our children are learning and whether or not they're going into schools on a daily basis is sad. It's really ridiculous, and it's really disheartening. I will also say, with regard to some of the whereases, I find them deeply disingenuous. I will highlight, whereas 70% of students in New York City, there's a typo, have chosen to attend school remotely. The reality is they didn't have any other option. For working parents, hybrid doesn't work. Their school gets shut down because, Magnus, sweetie, Magnus, can you stop doing that, sweetie? Our schools get shut down because of the 2-case rule, which makes it, if you're a working parent, which I've heard again and again from parents, makes it really impossible because you don't have the stability of knowing what days your kid will be in school. The fact that we don't have after school or extracurriculars mean that working parents have to pick up their kids at 2:30 or 3 p.m., which makes it absolutely impossible. At this point, we have tons of data from this year, and we have districts all over New York State and other states that have full-time open school without heightened transmission. So this notion that 70% of students have chosen remote is just not an honest statement coming from a council that's supposed to represent parents. Because the fact of the matter is, if schools were open, the vast majority of that 70% would be sending their kids to 5-day-a-week school. For the folks who want remote learning, it's going to continue in some form of fashion, sadly, but it is going to continue. Most of those parents would be back in school, just like in all the districts throughout the country, in Long Island, in upstate New York, where they've offered 5-day-a-week school, parents have gone back. That's the reality. So I think pretending like parents are choosing remote and therefore wouldn't be comfortable sending their kids into school where they would actually have a test to learn where the deficiency are and what they have lost over the years is just not honest. It's certainly not honest coming from a group of parents who are supposed to represent District 2 families. I'm certainly going to vote against this resolution.
Okay, great. Is there somebody else who from the council who would like to speak on this? I would like to say a few words. I just don't want to interrupt anyone. So I have one small anecdotal story, which is my daughter is in 4th grade this year. I have 2 older children. Heretofore, 4th grade was was pre-pandemic the anxiety year, where test scores, absences, latenesses, and grades counted. And the minute it was announced that there would be state tests this year, my daughter clenched her fists super tightly and her eyes got really big. And her older brother said, "Oh, you better watch out because they count, they count. This is the year." And it was just such an interesting moment in my house after all of the anxiety that all of my children have been through this pandemic, and then all of this pain of remote learning. I don't know anybody who likes remote learning unless their child is flourishing in it. Obviously, there are some people who are, but the fact of the matter is it just broke my heart, the idea that my 9-year-old daughter would be in any way nervous or upset about taking an assessment test. And the reason that she was upset about it was not because the state is giving this test to see where she is. If it were that simple, and that's what the members on this council who are claiming that it's an equity issue are claiming, that it's a simple, way to just assess where students are. If it were that simple, then my daughter would not be having a clenched stomach and a clenched fist. We know that part of the reason that many people on this council want this test given is because it is used as a metric to screen children either in or out of certain middle schools. So I just think it's so very telling that in this time when we have heightened anxiety, that somehow this is being used as for something that it doesn't need to be. We have something called the Nations Report Card, which is the NEAP exam, NEAP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. It is a standardized test that is given, and nations around the world rely on its findings to assess where we are as a nation in teaching our children. The way that is given is randomly, by taking small assortments of children, giving them the exam on a rotating basis. Certain districts, we could definitely be doing that with standardized testing to sort of see collectively where our children are. The problem is that these state standardized tests have been used to screen children, not as a way to find out where we are. The fact is, if parents want to opt out, they should be able to opt out. The reason that District 2 students are and District 2 parents have a very low opt-out rate is because they know that there's the possibility that this could be used against them in a middle school application process. So those are my views tonight. And Vincent, I see your hand up.
Oh, yes, I was gonna, wait until you had finished, but I just want to say that I heard opting out was not extraordinarily hard or should be theoretically easy. And yet there are various reasons why that apparently isn't so. But what is the mechanism that is proposed to make it easier, given that we're in March and the tests happen within the next 2 or 3 months? So that's creating another layer of bureaucracy for the DOE to be able to make things easier. I'm not sure if that was explained in the resolution. The other thing is that we talked about how we're trying to empower parents to make their own choices. And yet last month, we passed a resolution to promote controlled choice, which is, to me, taking away parents' right to make their own choices, or at least moderating the impact of those choices. So it seems inconsistent to me to, on the one hand, say that we need to make opting out more viable for parents, and then on the other hand, tell them that, well, your choices are going to be managed by third parties using different criteria. So which way are we going to go?
I just want to add that, Emily, I think your statement is the perfect example as to what the underlying reasoning is behind this resolution. It has nothing to do, it's basically a political statement, because the sponsors of this resolution, as Maud mentioned, are part of a faction that is greatly opposed to testing. You actually think that the test, or you're suspicious, or you believe that the test will, as it has been used in the past, will be used for screening purposes. And of course, anything having to do with screening, we know how certain members of this council feel. In their world, there would be no testing whatsoever. We would have no idea. Everyone would be exactly equal, and everyone would be in this perfect world, but that's not how the world works. But I can't think of a year that is more low pressure testing than this year. I just think, again, any metric that helps us identify those in need, those students who need to be targeted, those students who are behind. And it's wonderful to say, okay, our teachers are in the best position, but there are differences in teachers, there are differences in schools. And the standards that we're being told is meet standards, but there are differences in, is somebody barely making the standard? There are differences there. So I think any objective standard that holds people accountable, including teachers, to basic to a basic understanding of material is valuable. And I think that this resolution is clearly being done for political purposes. And I agree with Maud that this isn't something that anyone's asked for. And I think it's very telling who's sponsoring this resolution. We know what your positions have been in the past, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's be honest and let's be truthful with one another. If you feel that that tests are going to be used for screening, just say it.
I did just say it.
Say it. But put it in the resolution. Because I think that's why this resolution is being sponsored.
I'd like to add. I spoke with. I asked Chancellor Carranza during our December 8th meeting exactly along these lines, that we already have tests being given to students like iReady, which are nationally normed standardized tests. He had the argument that it's a formative exam, even though it's progressively harder with the iReady tests, and they're given now. So I don't know how children feel about it. For my own little focus group of 3 young girls, they don't seem to be bothered by it so much. It's not high stakes testing, but it's an important metric. It's for teachers to evaluate. But these are not being shared with us, and in a way that can be meaningful for parents. we are in a big problem here. We have a COVID achievement gap. We all agree with it, I think. I hope we do. And we need a national intervention for kids who are suffering. And we need data. I mean, we had a parent, Alex Shilkrat, he put it perfectly. He said, no data, no problem. You know, we have a problem. We can't escape it. Last year, a year ago, we were trying to escape whether COVID was a problem. And we took too long to combat that. We have to be responsible to these kids. We need to find out how they're doing and respond. And that's why this resolution, to me, I believe we should make things easier. You can write an email and say, I want to opt out my child from the test. Thank you, Principal so-and-so. And you're done. It takes 2 seconds. So in D2, if that's an issue, then they should come here and tell us. We should talk with our superintendent, Kelly McGuire, and say, tell that principal to be responsive to that parent. But it's easy to get done if you don't want to test. But if you do take the test, we find out what you should be doing. And Robin made the best argument for it. She said schools are performing differently. Some are full remote, some are now moving to full school day. Some are, there's a lot of differences. We need to know how that has impacted our students. This is the most critical time, especially for our young students between K through 3. We've been talking for the past 2 years. If you're not performing on grade level by 3rd grade, your chances of ever recovering are almost non-existent. And so we need to know that. As parents, it's so important. So I think we should be encouraging data. Now, if you want to argue whether it's high stakes or not, well, this is the year, as Len has said, it won't be high stakes. But what the high stakes are, as parents, as society, we have to make sure our kids are learning. I mean, that is the biggest equity program of them all, an education. There is no better equity program than anything else that we could do besides an education. If we can give our kids an education and know they're at their grade level and know they have a higher education, then succeeding as a society. Thank you.
I mean, it's just interesting. If we do believe that it's easy to opt out right now, I just don't understand why you'd be against offering another option to do it. It just feels additive. If you're so sure that right now it's so simple for a parent to, for many, muster the courage to approach their principal and decide they want to opt out, why would you be against having another option to do it? Unless you are so protest that it's actually the opposite, that you see this as a proxy and think, hey, we need the test at all costs. So I'm going to do everything in my power to preclude parents from having another option to do it. So if you want to make this a proxy for something else, it could be a proxy on both sides, but I think it's a very simple thing. If you think it's easy to do right now and there's no barriers, behavioral, structural, or process in place, then what would be the problem for having another channel to do it? To say, hey, you could write a letter, you could click in your My Schools account. That's it. Just another channel to do something that's apparently super, super easy. So in the end, this shouldn't create any additional opt-outs because right now there's zero friction. So every parent who wants to opt their kid out today is able to. So adding this new channel will have a zero incremental change is what your hypothesis is. Your hypothesis is it's so easy to do today that everyone who wants to do it does it. So then what would be the downside of adding another option? It's already easy. It's already simple.
And I guess I would just add to Len's point, I'm actually not against standardized testing. I think they're incredibly useful. I think that when done well and done correctly, they absolutely are an essential tool for schools, districts, nations, whomever. I think data is a good thing. And I don't think that testing is the worst thing in the world. I am against using that information to screen children in middle school. So I just want to be really clear that I'm not against standardized testing. I think that this year might not be the year to do it. I understand what you're saying in terms of getting information and look, yeah, the iReady is possibly a way that we could do, formative assessments or non-formative assessments, but actual assessments to see where children are. But also, I just think that, perhaps the DOE then, if they want a ton of parents to be able to opt in, can say, well, this isn't the year to use standardized tests as a means for screening. And that might be a way to take some of the anxiety that's already percolating up through my child's 4th grade out. Robin, we see you and you're on the list. So if you could just not raise your hand, that would be great.
So, Emily, I want to agree with you on that. I mean, if the issue is whether the 4th grade and 7th grade tests are going to be used for screening, I think that's a separate issue, though, than the opt-out. And Eric, to your point, I'll admit that I would like it to be harder to opt out. I don't think that sending an email, because especially in this year, I mean, if we could agree not to use these tests for anything other than diagnostic purposes, I think we would all be better off this year. But my fear is it would make it easier. And I don't think it's as easy writing an email right now. And I don't want to make it easier this year. I want to be able to identify what students are being left behind right now. So, I mean, that's why I would be against it. But on the separate issue of using these tests for screening this year, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely issues around that right now. I don't think it's the best way to assess, middle school or high school entrance at the moment, considering the circumstances. And also to say that with 70% of the students remote learning right now, that teachers are in a better shape now to assess their students' ability than opposed to other years. I don't think that's the case. I mean, a lot of students aren't even logging in, right? So I think we do need these diagnostics this year, just not for screening, which I am in favor of, but just this year, just for diagnostics.
Yeah, and I think this year has been a disaster. No offense, Mr. McGuire. I know the teachers are working very hard. I know my 3rd grader, who I'm most concerned about, I know that his teachers worked extremely hard. She's fantastic. But again, you're limited by the format that you're dealing with. It's very hard when my son plays a video game or wants to go on the computer every 15 minutes between the few limited remote sessions that he has each day or the live sessions that he has. It's tough. It's very tough to compete and to learn in that kind of environment.
Len,
So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to have to ask the public to please not raise their hand. We have a public session. You will be called on during the public session, and we haven't asked for people to call hands. Otherwise, we're really just going to have to stop the raise hand. We know what you're doing and we see it. Please stop. Sorry, Len. Please.
Okay. And I can understand why, there might be, why Chancellor Carranza might not want to have testing, because I'm afraid that it's going to show that it's a disaster. And it's not because teachers aren't trying hard, but it's just the format. And when you have the remote school. So again, to follow up on Tom's point, anything we have, I think is better. And it may not be perfect, as Robin mentioned, I agree. It may not be wonderful. It may not be the most optimal environment to administer tests. And there may be differences in schools, but any information that we can provide, but the message that we're sending as a CEC, the political message that, okay, we want to make it easier to opt out, or we want to give you more options. And this is a concern to our CEC opting out. It's virtue signaling that we have the problem with the test being used for other things, as you mentioned, rather than really addressing the real underlying issue, which is, as I think Ben or Tom mentioned, are the kids learning? I mean, this is the fundamental issue. And I want, as a parent, know where my child stands objectively in this environment, and what effect this horrific crisis, this remote blended situation of having schools closed like 183, 158 has on his level, his skill level, and whether or not he's actually where he's supposed to be. And I think it's going to be horrifying. I mean, I really do. And he's had the benefit of more resources than most people have. But I want to know, and I'd rather know that. And I don't think we're sending the right message by encouraging people in District 2 to opt out of anything. I mean, that's not what we as a district have always stood for. Not because the tests are being used for something else, but because we have great performing schools. We want to know where our kids are. And quite frankly, I think the administrations in the past have been very proud of the scores that our children in the grade levels and the percentages of our students that are at or exceeding standards has always been exceptional. And I think we want to maintain that. That's something we should strive for. And we want to, again, address the equity issue of those people who are not receiving the resources and for who this has been an absolute disaster, and get them the help that they need. That's all.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak on this resolution? Katerina, I will say, I know you can't vote on the resolution, but I do want to offer, I know it's your first night, so you do not have to speak, but I just want to let you know that you absolutely are allowed to speak during whenever there's comments or questions or anything like that. So I would just encourage you, it's your first night, so sit back and don't feel obligated, but this is a moment where you can weigh in as well. And we always love hearing the student perspective. So
thank you. I appreciate that. I will admit that I have skimmed through the resolution. I didn't have much time before today to read it. But I know that like when it comes to standardized testing, there's always some sort of incentive like to do well on it, or like there's a reason that like students take it, or that like schools care about their students taking it. And I know that when you mentioned that your daughter in 4th grade was thinking about like how important those tests were, like I had the same experience when I was in 4th grade and when I was in 7th grade preparing to apply to like the non-specialized high schools in the city, or like even then, because it's like the SHSAT, it's a test in and of itself, right? And like the incentive for me was always like, because I knew that it was going to impact like my admissions decision, and I cared like what school I went to, my family cared or whatnot. And like that was a personal incentive. But I wonder, like we've been discussing like what the purpose of the standardized testing, especially this particular year, is. And I wonder, like, I feel like that information is really valuable, like whether or not it's being used for a diagnostic purpose or whether or not it's being used for an evaluative purpose. Because I think that, you know, if like in my case, I'm currently taking Mandarin, and it has been very hard to learn Mandarin like via a virtual environment. And if I were tested tomorrow by like the standardized test that I was supposed to take last year on Mandarin, I'm not sure that I would pass that test. And if I knew that that was going to be, that if that was going to impact some admissions decision in the future, I would probably be hesitant to take that test if I had the opportunity to opt out. But if I knew that it was going to be used for a diagnostic purpose in terms of like seeing how the program for languages online has been working and how that's been impacting students like me, then I would probably be like, okay, I'm not going to be as stressed out about taking this as your daughter was looking at the 4th grade tests, because I'd be like, you know, this is not going to impact my future. And so like, I think that like listening to everybody, I've been going like back and forth on what I think, because it's just unclear to me like what the purpose of the test is this year and going forward, because I know that admissions has been changing in this district, you know, for many years for different reasons. And I think that at the very least, making the reason that the tests are being used and given is like the crux of whether or not like making opting in or opting out easier or harder is like the debate here.
thank you so much for weighing in. We appreciate that perspective. Okay, any last thoughts or comments that anyone would like to say? Otherwise, we are going to go and move on to the second public session.
Just one last thought, real quick. I am tempted to vote for this just to show that the DOE never listens to us anyway, because if we pass this, I can guarantee you that it probably wouldn't happen. But that's my last thought.
Thanks, Tom. Always nice to end it on a light note. And so, yes, the public session, the second public session. If anybody who would like to sign up for the second public session, this would be the last call now. It's CECD2.net. Click on our agenda, and after agenda item 5, you can say to sign up for public speaking, click here.
Okay, our first speaker is Liz Amadio.
I don't think she's on. She's not on.
I don't see her.
You know, we can always put her at the end. We'll ask one more time.
Good evening, everybody. This is Elka. So everyone has a right to their opinion, but let's be honest, there's nothing equitable about standardized tests. There never has been, and there never will be. These tests were made to measure a very specific type of learners' skills. And in this particular situation, I'm really disappointed that our teachers are now being made to pivot and make all of our kids, not just the ones who want to take the test, but all of our kids now experience test prep. So what happened to focusing on the emotional well-being of our kids? I also wanted to echo that it's very important for it to be simple to opt out of testing. Honestly, I think that the low opt-out rate to date is directly related to the fact that it's not been like very widely known as an option. It's been kind of elusive, honestly. And if we're going to talk about the major issues our school system face, let's start with safe facilities that can actually house all of our kids. We talk about going back to school, but we don't have buildings that can actually make this happen. We don't have enough staff members to provide services for our kids' needs. Maybe in a normal year, I would respect everyone's right to take any of these tests and you know, leave it up to the parents. But why now? When we already know it will definitely not measure anything meaningful, nothing. Our teachers already conduct regular assessments of our kids. If a kid isn't showing up to school, do you honestly think they're going to show up for a test? The fact that we still have kids without reliable Wi-Fi and device access, I'm sorry, but advocating for testing during a pandemic, it's just very out of touch with the realities of many of our communities. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next speaker is Robin Kelleher.
Oh, I think you missed Alex Shilkrut, Shino.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'm looking at two different things. Yes, Alex Shilkrut. Sorry about that.
I don't see Alex.
It's Alex S. Or at least that was who raised
Alex.
the hand earlier.
Alex S. Okay. You can unmute, Alex. You can unmute.
Okay. Alex, if you're having technical difficulties, we'll come back to you. Next, Shino.
Robin Kelleher.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for unmuting me. I appreciate it. And yes, I was raising my hand. I know that a lot of us have children to put to sleep, which is a priority right now. And it was getting late, and it seemed like we were talking a lot about personal situations. And Emily, I hear you. I really do feel for you. I also have a child who hates testing, but I also really, on the other hand, believe that testing is extremely important. So I know where he stands and how much learning loss has happened during the pandemic, because I know it's been a ton. And I want him to be prepared going into 5th grade and to make the best decisions possible as to whether or not he should still be in an accelerated curriculum or whether we should put him somewhere else. So that's my feeling about testing, but I don't really care about my feeling. My feeling about testing is kind of irrelevant, because what I care about is what District 2 cares about. And I believe that's why we're all supposed to be here. And I had some interesting conversations over the last week. And the gist of what I got was that people felt that the representatives on our CEC do not speak for District 2. I find anxiety happens when people's voices are not heard, or when people speak, they are ignored because it makes them feel small. And during a pandemic, when everyone already feels separated and small and unheard, it's damaging. And I don't know if you realize how small the numbers of participants are tonight, but it's pretty small. I think silencing people and taking away our video options and really kind of keeping us in our places is damaging. And I think that's a really bad message to send to District 2. And I want to echo a lot of what many of us have already brought up. We have a lot of really important issues that we should be focusing on, like safety at schools, the anxiety of children.
Time.
Can I just finish my last sentence?
Yes, go ahead.
About the resolution? I vote that we focus on passing resolutions that are really important for our children, not resolutions that just simply make it easier to do something that already exists. Let's focus on getting kids back in school and helping them with their anxieties, like Emily brought up, and safety. And I'd like to go on, but I know I have no more time, but there you go.
Just do want, normally I don't comment on what people said, but I do want to just remind people that unfortunately we have had a series of Zoom bombers, and that's why our cameras are off tonight. So I do want to apologize, Robin, and let you know that it has nothing to do with silencing people. Or the cameras are off because people in several different council meetings showed up with things that were not appropriate, unfortunately. And we really do hope to get rid of that. So we heard you, and we do thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Lilibeth Feliciano.
Hi, everybody. I'm unmuted. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. So I have twin girls in 4th grade. Everybody knows. One excels significantly. One has an IEP. Had the same experience where they heard about testing and both of them cringed and both of them felt like vomiting. It wasn't because of the test. It was because of the implication and the wide range of emotions that come with that. This will define what happens to me next year. And that has been what has perpetuated over decades and decades in New York City. If we are shifting to a more equitable education for our children, this is a big part of it that has placated over and over and over again. And so the thought of doing tests, it doesn't scare me. What bothers me is, just to piggyback what somebody else said, was the fact that it's not clear and blatantly clear. I mean, on a memo and an email to parents, standardized testings will not be used to screen children for middle school. And if that is communicated as clearly as we're saying it night and day right now, I think the anxiety of testing and the protest to testing wouldn't be as bad from parents like myself. Secondly, as Elka stated, teachers constantly review our kids. Why are we not speaking about regularly reviewing our kids? One test one day does not define my child. One test one day shouldn't define their entire year during the pandemic. So let's focus on ensuring there are students who have been hardest. Yes, they receive the support they need. I'm great with that. What I'm not great with is that these tests are used to size up students against each other for middle school, and that these exams are in fact stressful. Why are we not using the data that we get on a regular basis, that are screened every couple of months or every month and a half, that the teachers are actually doing? Why is that data not being talked about? Why are we not getting that as an overall picture? So, but I just want to say thank you for all you guys are doing. And I mean, I go back and forth on wanting to run for CEC because I want to represent voices that aren't heard. But I think that the environment, like someone else says, is very, it's very stressful sometimes. So, but thank you.
Next speaker is Lupe Hernandez.
Good evening, guys. Thank you for having us. I just want to make a point. I think our previous speaker said it very eloquently. And I have a student that has an IEP. He is on the spectrum, but in an ICT classroom in a public school. And we are struggling with whether or not to advance him into the 3rd grade solely based on the fact that they will start state testing next year. Never at any point, and I've had this discussion with his teachers and the principal on several occasions, has it even been offered that there was an opt-out, because he has made much progress in the conditions that the classrooms are much smaller, and we just don't know what next year will look like. but that was never made apparent to me. And I will say that I don't like the pivoting or the accusations amongst the board members stating that someone is an anti-tester simply because there's a big disagreement on specialized testing for high schools, because this is standardized testing, and history has shown across this nation that these have not been used in good faith for our students. So to question or pivot District 2 as a whole, because District 2 may have the lowest rate of opting out, does not mean that there are families out there that may not be as confident as I am to speak to my principal on a regular basis and may not feel comfortable with just writing that email simply. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like voting rights. Why not make it easier for people? It's our right. If it's our right as a family, as a parent, to make those decisions based on our personal circumstances, we should be able to have that right, and it shouldn't be anyone else's business, including the principal who may feel that they may want to encourage or discourage you from opting out of that test because it will affect the school as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, before we go to the last speaker, I want to try Alex again. Alex, if you're here, I'm trying to unmute you.
No response,
No response. Okay, the last speaker is Robin Kelleher again.
Hi, I just want to be quick, and I want to state that one more thing that I heard from parents, which was, somewhat disturbing to me, is they felt that the CEC has dissolved into a forum where people vote in blocks, and that they're tired of seeing Robin and Eric and Tom and Emily and Chino all sort of blocking the progress that most District 2 parents want. And they wish they'd get out there and really talk to parents. And I know that, Tom, you've kind of been back and forth, and I know you had, your own stuff happen, and I'm sorry for all that happened. I know it became very personal, but I know the CEC is a tough job, and I commend you all for volunteering your time. But I really do wish that you'd think and speak and vote based on your own beliefs, separate from what your peers are doing or any other political reasons. And I understand, Emily, thank you. I know the Zoom bombs were embarrassing and inappropriate, but I do wish that we still had video and we could see one another. I wish there were chats. I wish there was more interaction so that parents felt comfortable expressing their support, their disagreement, and their views, because I do believe that's the purpose of the CEC. It's a way for parents to get involved and communicate and share how they feel. Thank you.
Emily, we have one more speaker. Two. Alex is back, and then Mar Fitzgerald. So I'm gonna go ahead, Alex. You're unmuted.
Yeah, and I want to echo, like Len, in support, of testing, and people often kid themselves when they think that opting out of screen, and testing will not, screen their kids. So essentially, if screening continues, opting out of testing will equal that kid would fail the test. Also, parents, who feel that their child would fail the test are more likely to opt out. So with that said, tests will increase, but those children, who are troubled, will be further left behind. And people who screen children will find the ways to screen them. Like they'll use different mechanisms, different metrics, and opting out will paper over the data, but will not make it easier. And also people say, oh, screen testing should be abandoned. There are different ways to curve it. You can curve it to years pre-COVID. You can curve it, like to current cohort, so essentially, like some people don't want to know data and don't want to know by how much kids are failing.
Okay, our last speaker is Mar Fitzgerald. Go ahead, Mar.
Hi. I'd like to say that I am so glad that the leadership of this council once again has the best interests of all of our children in their minds and in their hearts. And it is great to see this change since the change in leadership. Kids have been through so much this year. The last thing that they need is the stress and pressure of these tests. The regular assessments are a much better measure of where students stand. So let's just make that process smoother, transparent for those who choose to exercise their right to opt out. Thank you again for crafting such a strong and thoughtful resolution to support public school families. You have my full support and the full support of other District 2 families like mine. Thank you.
Okay, great. And that's going to end our second public session. Thank you so much, public, for speaking. Okay, we are going to go to the voting of the resolutions. There is only one resolution. So Vincent, would you like to take a roll call and we will vote? Oh, sorry. Somebody needs to put a motion to vote. Does somebody put a motion to vote?
I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Does anyone second it?
Second.
Thank you, Eric. Great. So Vincent, would you like to call roll and we'll take a vote?
Yes, I will do that. So in alphabetical order, Robin Broshi, how do you vote on the resolution to make opting out easier?
Yes.
Okay, Eric Goldberg.
Yes.
Okay, Emily Halstrom.
Yes.
I am going to vote against the resolution. Edward is not present. Maud Marin, how do you vote? Okay, Benjamin Morden, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, Ushman Neal, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Len Silverman, how do you vote?
No.
Shino Tanakawa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Rockledge, how do you vote?
No.
So the resolution does not pass. The final tally is so it's 4 yeses, 5 noes, and 1 abstention.
Great. Thanks so much. Oh, did you have something else, Vincent?
Let's see. I'm just checking to make sure I recorded that right. It's 4 yeses,
That's
5
correct.
no.
4 to 5 to 1.
Right. And Edward was not present.
Correct.
Okay, so the resolution does not pass.
Thanks so much, Vincent.
Do we allow our student to vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's not allowed to vote, but
I know that,
she's
but
allowed to
does she
say.
get to have a say?
Yes, you are allowed to say how you wanted to vote if you feel like you want to.
I haven't read the resolution in full, so I'll abstain.
No worries. Great. Thanks so much. But just know in our previous council, when we had a student member, we did ask her if she wanted to record her. I'm not record her vote, but to say it.
So
okay, great. So we're going to go on to the approval of the minutes. Did everybody read the minutes?
Move for approval of the February minutes.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone voting no? Abstention. It looks like that passes. Great. And any new business?
You know what? I just wanted to bring up, I thought one of the speakers actually did bring up a good point with the video. I don't know whether that's a working business thing. If we could figure that out for next time. And I know I was one of the only ones, if not the only one, to speak out against ending the chat. I think we should bring that up for discussion as well. If it could be, tried again and used properly. I think it, I don't know if we could take a vote on that. But I've seen other CECs use it without a problem. I've seen other Zooms use it without a problem. It's been a problem for students in temporary housing only because, we wanted to post links to websites.
You can use it you can set it up, Tom,
Okay.
in your committee meetings, because I used it in my committee. I use it in my students' temporary housing committee all the time. We can set it up for committees, and we'll make sure that you know how to do that.
Okay, cool.
I just would say, like, in our general meetings, when we were in buildings, I don't think we encourage a lot of side chit chat of people. And so, I just don't know why in a formal general meeting that we need to have people making comments on speakers. And there's almost no way to stop people from commenting on those who are speaking. I think from some people who are used to public speaking, it's pretty easy for somebody to just unmute themselves and say what they think. For other people, to go and stand up in person and make a statement during a public session is a brave thing for them. And to then have comments going on in a chat about what that person says, I think it has a chilling effect. But for right now, we're not gonna, if you don't mind, Tom, just because it would be nice to.
Yeah, if I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted. That's fine.
Well, but also we can actually try using the webinar function, because that allows us, the chat would then be just to panelists. We can set it so that the chat only goes to panelists, so they won't be necessarily chatting with each other, but we can also post links in the chat. You can elevate people as panelists when they speak so that we can have the video and audio both. I think it might be worth trying out a different functionality within Zoom to see if there's one that works best.
Co-sign that idea. Yep.
Can I just say, I'm not sure, did we actually, as a council, come to an agreement? I think at some point we discussed the chat, but did we actually as a council vote on whether or not, for example, to have video,
So it's a technical limitation, and there were some pretty hostile emails that went around accusing us of not knowing how to operate our Zoom correctly, that allowed for some inappropriate behavior to happen among participants. So this was really just to make sure this was the technological way that, as we understood it, to limit people from being able to turn on their own video and take off their clothes, which is what happened last week.
Can we figure out how to
talk about this in? Can we talk about this in working business?
Yeah,
I
let's
think this
definitely
is
do this in the working business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll
So
do it in 5
this
minutes, just end it and pick it
Absolutely.
back up.
So I'd like to, I would like to know if anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to
I have a
adjourn.
question.
Sorry.
I have a question. Hi. So my question is regarding the minutes. I noticed in the Google Drive that's linked on the website, the most recent minutes are from October. Where can I and the other parents watching this meeting find, well, I'm not a parent, but the other people watching this meeting find the minutes from the meetings between October and today?
There should be links to it. I think I think we need to get Yvette to confirm where those reside or how to get to those. I know they were done. There was a bunch that were approved en masse during one of the more recent meetings, but I think after, so we'll definitely get you information about where that material is. I just don't recall exactly how to get to it at this moment, but we'll take care of that.
Katerina, you can watch on our YouTube channels. We have most of the meetings there. They're long, so good luck.
Do you have 20 hours?
Stick with the minutes. I'd stick with the minutes.
Okay,
Motion
so
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I heard a second. I know I did. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to put a 3-minute bathroom break on, and then we will start call to order our working business meeting.
Emily, can we really make it 5? I think that's unrealistic.
Okay, we'll make it 5.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, thanks, Kelly, so much. And I don't know, you generally, I mean, I think most superintendents leave after the this general meeting, so don't feel obligated to stay for the working business. Thanks for participating.
Sure.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Do you know how to, somehow I got into some weird thing where I can only see people who are featured as co-hosts or something like that, and I can't see anything now.
Okay, I can see other. Is there anything you wanted to do? I can
Well,
see.
I have to like undo something, and I don't know how to undo whatever it was that
Let's see. So would I just go to you maybe, and all I have is mute, stop video, pin, and spotlight for everyone. So.
All right.
Sorry.
It's okay. Oh, here we go.
I mean, if you want to re-enter, I don't know if that would help. I could admit you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, do that. Hey, Ushma, Emily had to leave and is trying to re-enter, just in case you can see her.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't know if something happened with her access for some reason.
All right. Well, we don't have a waiting room anymore, so hopefully as soon as she shows up, there we go.
Oh, did she show up?
Yeah, she just showed up
Okay.
again on the participant list, but I think only Robin can make her a co-host. Because I can't, but which means that she also can't like here. I'll ask her to unmute, but
Great, thanks. That's perfect. Yeah, it didn't correct, but
so I can't co-host you. So until Robin comes back, but I could unmute you.
You know what it is? What I did was there was some weird option where it said hide participant or something like that. And now I only see like one person at all. So, oh well.
Did you try the view?
Yeah.
If you hit gallery view, you can see.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. On gallery view,
gallery. Wow.
Or release video order, or sometimes you can click a thing where it only shows the people who have their video on. I like that.
That's what it is. It's only the people who have the video on. How do I undo that, Ushma?
If you're on
the view thing, there should be one of those options that either releases the video order or release something.
Yeah, if you're on a computer, just go to the place that you usually like press gallery, like the place that says view, and it should say something like show non-video participants. Just press on that and it will revert.
Hooray! Thank you so much.
Really showing us up today, Katrina. Calling us out on the minutes, improving her Zoom.
Apologies, I was just trying to catch up. And I did actually watch part of the last 4.5 hour meeting before today.
Oh man.
You can watch us on like 1.5 speed, and that might make it a little bit easier on you.
I vote we put Katrina in charge.
Yeah, me too.
It was a bit long, but.
Yeah, aren't they all? I have I don't know if I should wait for the working business, but is there any chance that we're going to revert to actually in-person meetings during?
After today, there's 3 meetings left.
Right.
So I don't know
I
the
think,
likelihood.
yeah. Sorry, Vincent.
Yeah, it seems remotely, very remotely possible.
I think until
Tom,
we have
I was actually going to
widespread-
bring that up because that's a serious issue in
Right.
terms of budgeting for the
Oh,
year.
yeah, that's true.
So I'm going to bring it up, but I don't think we should revert till June because we can't project budgets then. And everything would have to change.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's still contraindicated until you get enough people vaccinated. So.
Yeah,
Well, that was a different point, but in terms of like our own little fiefdom of what we can control, you know, and I just would not be in favor of it, even if it all collapsed, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, we could all go back to normal. But from July, that's a different story for me.
You wouldn't be allowed in a school.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but do we have to be in
I
a
mean-
school? Can we meet somewhere else if that were a possibility?
Like where?
His apartment.
Central Park. Do a nice outdoor
I
meeting.
don't think so.
Yeah. Barbecue.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting
I'm at the
idea. We
barbecue,
could
but-
do a outdoor meeting. Central Park sounds good.
Yeah. Katrina, you're in charge of that.
So we'd have to get permits to assemble in Central Park.
Yeah.
What about Union Square? Come on.
That's
All
a good
those
idea.
steps.
We might get some Zoom bombs. You know what?
I think we're remote for the next 3 meetings.
Robin, are you back? I don't know if Robin's back. Nope.
Hey, I have to step away for a minute, but I don't know if you could just take the roll quick and then I'll be
Yeah.
back, or I could
Okay.
come back when, yeah.
It would be great to start the working business meeting for the CECD2. And Vincent, if you could take roll.
Sure. So Robin Broshi, are you present? Apparently not yet. Eric Goldberg, I know, is here.
Yes, I'm here. I'm going to step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay, Emily Hellstrom.
I am here.
I am here as well. Edward is still not present. Maud Marin. Okay. Ben Morden.
I'm here, yes.
Okay, Ushma Neal.
Here.
Len Silverman.
Here.
Shino Tanakawa.
Here.
Tom Rockledge.
Here.
And Katarina is present as well.
And Vincent, if you could just let the record reflect that Robin is here.
Robin, oh, I see. Yes, okay. So we have, again, 10 members plus Katarina. And turn it back to Emily. Emily, you're
Emily, you're
mute.
muted.
Great, sorry about that. Okay, great. So we have new business on our agenda first. Is there any new business?
Well, we could pick up the conversation. I have 2 suggestions. It looks, I just did some Zoom research. It looks like we can tweak some of the settings so that if everyone logs in with video on, and then co-hosts can turn off the video, and I think then we will have the option to ask people to turn their video on the same way we ask them to unmute themselves. So I just will need to play around with that, and then that would allow us to do the video option. Shino suggested webinar. That would cost $1,400 a year for 500 attendees, which is an extraordinary increase from what we're currently paying. Shino also thought maybe the DOE account was available, that other CECs use it. I think there was a reason we didn't opt for it, like there was a limitation on the number of participants, but that does allow for the webinar feature. So maybe we'll look into refresh our memories why we didn't go with using the DOEs. So there's three things: figuring out if we can let people turn on their video, or two things, and researching whether the DOE's Zoom option might give us more functionalities using webinar. Does that sound good?
So the webinar function would just be for us, basically, or?
Well, webinar is essentially Zoom with a lot of additional functionality that would be for the council to program for each meeting.
And you can ask people to undo their camera if you want.
Essentially, people are designated as panelists. That would be like co-hosts. They're like us, members would be panelists. And then we can temporarily promote anyone we want to be a panelist, meaning members of the public during the public session, where they can then speak with their video on, and then we demote them back. And it also allows for a lot of more versatility with the chat option. It gives a lot more control over you have a lot more granular control over the chat.
Okay. I mean, just a lot of parents have reached out and to me and said that taking away the chat kind of silenced them.
The thing that is so interesting to me about the chat, which, listen, I've seen the chat go really well and I've seen it go really poorly. The thing that I don't understand is, in no time in our regular meetings is anyone ever chatting to everyone in the room at the same time that somebody else is talking. So you do not get that at a regular meeting. So I don't know why it feels as though they can't. I mean, listen, anyone can comment it in their head, or you can text your friend and be like, oh, I don't like this guy's glasses, or whatever you want to say, you can say that in a forum. Just like if you were sitting at a CEC meeting, you could lean to your neighbor and be like, oh, what a windbag, or whatever. But you never at a CEC public meeting where you are making a comment that everyone can hear while something else is going on.
Yeah, I mean, I hear, but I don't think our meetings now are completely analogous to our meetings prior to the pandemic. So I mean, I thought it was a good way to interact with, or have the public interact, ask questions. I mean, as members, we could answer a lot more questions. I thought it gave us the power, if somebody had a specific question and we had the answer, just to give it to them.
You could screen share though. I mean, I think our experience with the chat has been really negative. I think the nasty things, there have been some nasty, really rude, obnoxious, bordering on hate speech said about a lot of the people that are on this council. I mean, things that you're right, that, and I agree with Emily, would never, nobody would ever have the temerity and the rude manners to say them in person. But I think the chat, the feeling that you could just post and write whatever you want. And I think it's not a good idea, but I do believe that there's something to be said for being able to see someone's face when they're talking. And I know District 30, I think, pays for that that webinar thing that you were talking about. And I think we really should try to encourage a face-to-face interaction with people in our district, especially if
I
we're
absolutely agree.
Do it remotely.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you, Len, about video, and let's try to get it working. And I also agree about the chat. I mean, we tried it. We didn't just make a unilateral decision without it having been an option. And
we tried it several times.
Yes, we tried it over multiple meetings. And there's, I mean, as members of the public pointed out tonight, we don't all agree on things a lot of the time. But this is one where we seem to really almost all gravitate toward this understanding that the chat was just really harmful, more than, not that there's always trade-offs.
Can I ask a quick question? Are you able to change horses midstream? Like if you tried right now to turn on people's ability to be able to turn on their video, could we do that? Because it seems to me like what we have usually had is that we start the meeting, you get all these Zoom bombers, we get rid of them, and then the rest of our meeting can go on in peace. So is there an opportunity for us to, like right now, if you wanted to change it such that,
yes,
Stefan Lautner could turn on his video right now?
Yes, right now I can allow participants to start their video, and then anyone who wants to start their video can. I guess one of the things that I think that's fine, and we can just have the meeting go like that, and then as soon as there's Zoom bombers, stop the video. And if that's what people want to do, like, I think we can agree to try that.
Well, Robin, you only just found that out just now in the break.
No. I announced earlier in the meeting, I can start everyone's video during the meeting. And we said, don't do that because that's what gets us into the problem, right? It's not, I can start everyone's video, allow everyone to start their video. I can't, like with the unmute, it's more granular where you ask an individual to start their video. That's not one of the options. When the Zoom bombing is happening, you get flustered and it's like, oh, I got to find the pull down menu to stop everyone's video. That's not impossible. And there's still the damage, the harm that can come from what people have put in their video screen, like for a split second. I don't want to minimize that, but no, I mean, we can make a choice also. So I want to research whether there is an option to do a more granular stop video, but we can also decide that we're going to trust that people won't do that, stop it if they do it, and then just, wait 15-20 minutes, hope we, excised that group, and then try to start it again.
So the video is more challenging because we have multiple pages, right? And if somebody's Zoom bombing using just the video, we are on the first page because we're co-hosts. And we don't know what anybody's doing on page 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we don't have the chat, there's no way for a participant to communicate to us that there's a Zoom bomber on page 3. So
it's a hand, right?
They could raise hand, yes. So that's one way. But people raise hand to sign up to speak. So we have to really clearly tell them that if you're raising a hand, it's an emergency or something. But that's something we have to think about. If we allow people to start their own video, then we are running into that area where we don't know what people are doing on other screens.
Unless you designate one of the members to be constantly scrolling through the pages and looking for issues, I don't know. That seems like a viable option to pursue, but that means that.
Oh, I was just informed also that the webinar function has a question answer capability.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And quite frankly, I mean, Robin, I know $1,400 sounds like a lot of money, but we want a surplus. I mean, all the time. I mean, I guess
it's up to everyone, right?
I think it sounds like a good idea.
We want a huge surplus, and especially since when we're remote, it's more of a surplus. So it might be worth investigating. You can always cancel it.
Yeah. I think we should do everything we can, invest resources to try to at least make sure that, we can have the face-to-face interaction in a respectful way that doesn't end up having people insult each other.
All the symposium that I run are webinar format, and it's just so much easier, and you have the capacity to send links around to all participants. The participants can chat to the panelists. I'm in here too. I mean, and what else are we spending our money on? So
well, I think that's probably a good, did somebody have, sorry, did I cut
something? I was just going to recap that. So I can look into seeing what the DOE webinar option is in case it's free. But you know, and I know we're about to talk about the budget, I think, is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe
So,
perhaps
okay,
is a
so
seamless way to
like
transition towards the
we
budget.
can literally buy it. I think they prorate, don't they? They have different, we can buy it for one meeting at the very least and agree to do it for the April meeting, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, and then and vote on it or whatever.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we have the budget discussion, and then we can circle back and see if we want to spend that chunk of money on, if we even still can. I think we are under the window. And then we could do the kind of thing where if we can get it for free and it makes sense to do it for free, we can get the free one. So moving on to the budget discussion. Ben, did you want to kick us off here?
Well, Shino was the only person to make some proposed new ideas for the budget going forward. And so I saw her numbers. I think there might be one or two things that would have to be tweaked on in terms of the, I have to speak to her. I emailed with her earlier today because I think there were some amounts that didn't work out in my mind in terms of not in terms of what her suggestions was, but in terms of how they calculated. But let you know, speak to it, I think.
So I might actually screen share. That might be easier to, can I share the screen? I should be able to, right? Yes, okay. So it's actually kind of messy and complicated because we got the up-to-date numbers from our senior grants officer, and that was as of February 25th. But then there are pending reimbursement payments that haven't been paid out. So those are something that I have to account for. And then there are these recurring payments, which is the Zoom, which is a little bit complicated because Yvette was unable to transfer Zoom payments to the P card for whatever reason. So it's still on Robin's card. So I have to account for that reimbursement and remaining payments. So we missed a deadline to order equipment, which is this top line here, $3,200. And I spoke to Yvette and she said she didn't need a laptop. She didn't need any computers. So we can't spend this money anymore because we missed the deadline for purchasing equipment. So we have this $3,200 we can do something with. And getting to the bottom, I think if I calculated everything right, we are only going to spend $17,900 or so. That's the bottom number there, which means we'll have, oh, I can't do the math. It's 7,000 plus that we can play with. And that's where we are. The P card is something that's very complicated because we put it in the budget line as P card, but things we buy with P card actually get allocated to one of these categories. So we use the P card to purchase the website hosting, which we only paid $168. I'm not sure why. We also use the P card to purchase the Wix app for events calendar plugin and constant contact. So although we have P card as a budget line, things that get charged to P card actually get shifted into one of these budget categories. So that makes things a little bit complicated. We do have an opportunity to purchase supplies for students in temporary housing if we wanted to. There's a variety of ways the DOE came up with that allows us to do it. One of the ways is to shift whatever amount of money we want to into the superintendent's budget line, which Kelly would prefer not to do. Another way is we purchase supplies, whatever we decide to purchase, and have them shipped to Kelly's office, the District 2 office, and Kelly will work with us to distribute the supplies to students in need. The third way is we can find a central department within DOE, whether it's the special education division or community schools or whatever it is, and send the money to that division, and they will spend it according to what we specify we want the money spent. So those are three ways we can use our money towards unusual things that we are usually not be able to do.
Excuse me, Sheena,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that you were, maybe I missed it. Where did you get this ruling from about how to use the money for unusual things?
So ECC worked with the DOE because there are a lot of councils who were going to have a lot of money left over in the budget and wanted to use that money for purposes other than what they can spend the money on. Most of the CECs want to spend the money on students in temporary housing. So we worked with Central DOE, and that's what they were able to come up with. What we really wanted was for us to be able to spend the money the way we want and distribute the goods to whoever we wanted. But we are not supposed to know where the shelters are for students in temporary housing. We're not allowed to have the addresses, which meant that we can't purchase supplies and ship them there.
Or a particular unit? Was there a particular unit or entity at Central DOE that you conferred with?
FACE, and FACE consulted with legal and the finance officers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shino, as we talked earlier, I think there's a lot more money in the budget. I mean, on our account that's going to be unspent, like the operating office supplies, and then or some of the other ones here.
Yeah, so I put 500. I left $500 in the transportation category because if we do decide to purchase supplies for students in temporary housing and ship them to the district offices, maybe we need cab money for somebody to distribute the supplies to all the shelters.
Professional services.
I put 3,000 in because maybe somebody has an idea for something, like Tom had an idea for a professional survey last year. Maybe somebody else has an idea for some professional services that might be useful. I don't know what that might be. I've put in $3,000.
But that's a total of 5,000.
No, I'm amending. So this March column that has the March modification, that replaces what we did in July. So that becomes the new total, right?
Okay.
So instead of 2,000 that we had for professional services, we'll go to 3,000 if we wanted to. We had 2,640 for transportation. I reduced it to 500, so we'll still have $500 we can do something with. I put another 1,000 into miscellaneous because I think it's a pretty flexible, convenient category to park some money into. But now we have this $3,200 or 2,000 in equipment that we can move to somewhere else because we won't be able to use this $2,000.
Oh,
Yep. So let me know when you want me to stop sharing screen. And you all have access to this.
All right.
Yeah, it's a shared file.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure I shared it with all of you.
Yep, I believe that you did.
Yep.
Okay, so we
So I
really
wanna-
do need to make some decisions though tonight before things get locked in. Is that correct, Shino?
Correct.
Well, some things were already locked in. As she said.
Right, as we
Right,
know.
right.
The equipment is locked in.
Yeah.
And furniture.
Okay. Well. Okay, so in the interest of time, does somebody want to make a suggestion?
I may be biased, but I'd say give the remainder to students in temporary housing.
Great, so we have a proposal on the floor to give the remainder of the money to students in temporary housing.
I think with the caveat that we look into whether or not the DOE has the functionality for us to be able to use webinar and otherwise spending a small amount of the balance to give us the capability to host webinar style meetings, and then thereafter spending the rest of it on students in temporary housing. That absolutely has my vote as well.
Well, I would just add to that. I don't want to reserve a small amount. I want to reserve whatever amount is necessary to ensure that we can have full webinar access if we if we decide to go that route.
So, okay, 1,400 for the year. So divided by 12, how much is that per month? Can somebody help me with the math?
Like 120.
120. So we have 3 months left, right? 4, 5, 6. So
You put 5,100 as a modification there. That's more than enough.
well, I did the math. This project is projected through 6/30/21. It's based on what I think we're going to still have to pay. This includes reimbursements that haven't come in yet. So we'll have to add, it's 120, so it's 360, right? So this becomes, let's just call it 5,400 for Zoom. We'll zero out equipment and put it into oops. Well, I don't want to go through this tedious process with all of you in the Zoom. Let's come up with
Shino, if Tom or no one is going to recommend doing professional services, then why not throw the 3,000 into that too? I mean, it's
yes.
Either
okay?
we would do something, or my other option would be to allocate some money and prepay for the CEC account for next year, because who knows if the budget will be there to have Yvette had wanted to prepay some web for the website and for emails and some other features 6 months forward or some amount. So there isn't an issue like we had at the beginning of our first term.
Good idea. Okay.
And so the technical stuff that's absolutely necessary to keep the momentum of the council meetings going, I think might be worthwhile if we continue remote.
I don't know if this is kosher or not. I don't know if Jennifer is still in the meeting with us, but can we vote on the conceptual framework for the budget? And then Ben and I will work on the actual revised budget before the deadline and share it with you. And if we have to schedule a quick just vote on the meeting, vote on the budget meeting, we will. But if we can at least get an approval that will account for some things that we will need to spend money on, but whatever is left over, we'll put it into the supplies for students in temporary housing. Can we at least get a vote on that?
Doesn't look like she's in the meeting anymore.
Okay. Well, I can verify with Michelle and Jennifer later.
Or Shito, as you said, we can call for a meeting, a special meeting just to vote on the budget.
Yeah, we can. And it'll just be a really quick meeting just to vote on it, so.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the proposal that we vote right now just on a very broad framework for that. So let's see, that Ben and Shino are going to get more granular with the budget, and if it has to be voted on, it can, but that we're going to set aside some monies for a webinar function, and other than that, all of the money goes to the students in temporary housing.
One caveat, Emily, and also for like the website as well.
Yes.
And email.
Yes.
Yeah, certain services that we want to prepay and the webinar services, we'll set money aside for those items and the
Constant
rest
contact.
remainder, right. And the remainder will go into the students in temporary housing. I do want to suggest that we set aside some money for transportation because we may need that line to transport the supplies to each shelter site. So
If we run out of money, Sheena, I will drive the supplies so the kids can get it.
Okay. So do you want to not have 500 for transportation, or do we?
I'd rather we spend it on the kids personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if we have,
I just
people
hosted
with-
yesterday 50 girls so they could play chess for free online. So, you know, whatever it
they're-
takes, let's get it done.
Great. If there are people with cars who are willing to drive, then let's zero that out too. And then so the rest goes to students in temporary housing. That sounds great.
That sounds great. Okay, does somebody second that?
Second.
Second.
Third.
I just wanted one other thing to conceptualize that one how we agree on how it's spent in terms of like, because there's a decision point. Do we give it to the to superintendent's office or to the DOE office? Is there a preference there? Because I do have a preference. I'd rather personally would rather see it go to the superintendent's office.
Well, the third option is we purchase the supplies and then we work with the superintendent. on
Right, that's the
distribution
option I
side.
prefer.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
that's the option I prefer as well.
Great, and that
That
is the
also
option.
gives us the ability to get the best price, like through Tom's contact, if they're still willing, around things like headsets. So I agree with that as well.
Okay, so
Is everybody else? Can we get 6 votes on that?
Great.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions, recusals? Great.
So
Okay.
that's 10, 0, and 0, right? For the budget proposal that generally sets forth paying for webinar and communication services and prepaying for some services, with the remainder to students in temporary housing.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
And Shino, if we can just, I would also like to just get a legal opinion that everything we're doing is fine by the DOE, because I have to sign off on it.
Yes, we'll do.
Okay.
Great. And there is nothing else on our agenda except for, I'm going to make a motion for this meeting to be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
And congratulations to Karina.
Welcome, Karina and Katarina, sorry. And
Katarina, sorry.
That's all right. And thanks for the public who stayed for this long. And we will see you all next month or in our Students in Temporary Housing meeting tomorrow night. Bye all.
We're not having that.
Oh, no, you're not
We're
having
not having that.
That's right. Sorry.
Next week, next Wednesday, please
Next
tune in
Wednesday.
at 7.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Stay
Thank you for
safe.
your patience.
Bye.
Good night.